Well, welcome everybody. It's the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, May 18th. We typically are recorded and being broadcast on cable television, but I'm told the cable isn't working tonight, so it will be recorded. And to start the meeting, we always have the Pledge of Allegiance. So everybody stand. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda tonight will be the presentation by Melanson Heath of the town's fiscal year 14 audit. And I know we have a couple of representatives here, Karen and Frank from the accounting firm, and Julie McCarthy, our town accountant.
Good evening. I just would like to introduce formally Karen Snow and Frank Byron from Melanson Heath. They're going to do a presentation on the 2014 audit results.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. My name is Karen Snow, and I'm the audit manager for the town of Lynnfield's audit. Thank you for having us here tonight to present the results of the June 30, 2014 financial statement audit. I know you have a full agenda, so my intention is to just do a very brief overview of the financial statements and the management letter, but if you have questions, please feel free to interrupt me and ask any questions that you might have as I go along.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome. Starting with the annual financial statements. In the first page of the financial statements, the first 3 pages are the independent auditor's report, which is essentially what the town of Lynnfield hires us to do, is to audit your books, your financial statements, to make sure that they are materially correct and stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. As in years past, the town of Lynnfield has an unmodified audit opinion, otherwise known as, sometimes called a clean opinion. And you see that opinion on page 2. And that essentially means that, in our opinion, the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The audit opinion also spells out the town's responsibility and the auditor's responsibility in the whole process of this audit. The next few pages of the document are the management's discussion and analysis, which is pages 4 through 11. This is a narrative overview of the financial statements and results of operations. Sort of hits some of the highlights of what was going on in the town of Lynnfield in fiscal year 2014. We generally just skip right through this, but this is a really good section for somebody who prefers to read a narrative as opposed to just looking at numbers. So if you skip right past that to page 12, we will just start right in with the financial statements. Page 12 is the statement of net position. The statements on pages 12 and 13 look a little bit different than the Lynnfield's general ledger, and that's because these statements are converted to what's called the full accrual basis of accounting. The general ledger is normally kept on a modified accrual because its focus is current resources available to pay current expenses. But this is presented more like a business in that it has your long-term assets and your long-term liabilities on this statement. So what you'll see here is your land and construction in progress, your capital assets, which are your long-term assets, your non-current assets. You'll also see some receivables, which represents some of your tax title and tax deferrals that are not necessarily going to be collected and available for current resources, so they're classified as non-current. And then on the liability side, you see your long-term liabilities, which is your bonds payable, your compensated absences, which is your accrued sick and vacation time, and then other post-employment benefits. Other post-employment benefits is one of the largest numbers that you're going to see on this financial statement, and it's only going to be on these statements. And what that is your benefits that you pay for health insurance for retirees. And back a couple years ago now, probably 3-4 years ago at least, GASB 45 came out, and you were required to report this liability for the first time on these financial statements in order to recognize that you have made a promise to pay retirees. Even your current employees will be receiving these benefits when they retire. Businesses have had to recognize these liabilities for a long period of time, but it wasn't until recently that governmental entities were required to also put these numbers on their financial statements. So as of June 30, 2014, the amount that Linfield had recognized for that liability was $21.4 million. It's being recognized over a period of time. So that's not the full liability. The full liability is actually $56 million. And you will see that on page 50 of the financial statements. And there's also quite a significant note on this particular liability, note 22, which is on pages 43 to 47 of the financial statements. So at the end of the funding schedule, that full liability will be on these financial statements. Though there is some talk that that funding schedule will be accelerated, and within a couple of years, the GASB is probably going to come out with another pronouncement, and they'll actually require you to recognize that all at once. So I would guess in the next 5 years or so, they're going to require that full liability to be on these financial statements. What's not on these statements yet, which you will see in June 30, 2015, is going to be a net pension liability. And that represents Linfield's portion of the unfunded liability for the Essex Regional Retirement System. And just a quick, we won't know exactly what that number is going to be, but a quick estimate, Linfield is about 8% of that retirement system, and the unfunded liability is about $348 million. So a quick estimate is that next year on the 6/30/15 financial statements, actually this year coming up in a few months, you're going to have to recognize again on this statement only another liability of around $28 million. So quite significant liabilities being reported on these financial statements. And what that does, if you look at net position, you see the last number of unrestricted net position, you'll see that that's a negative number, and that's directly related to, at this point in time, that's directly related to the other post-employment benefit liability. That deficit is going to increase quite dramatically when the unfunded pension liability has to be recognized for 6/30/15. Because that has to be recognized all at once. There's no funding schedule. It's just going to be put on all at once. The next page, page 13, I don't have a lot to say about this. This is, again, a statement that presents your results of operations on a full accrual basis of accounting. So the expenses for OPEB is recognized in here. Other adjustments are done to recognize accruals for long-term debt interest and things like that that are not kept on your general ledger and recognized in your fund basis financial statements. So skipping right on to page 14, this is the beginning of your governmental funds financial statements, and this is going to look more familiar because it is the same basis that you keep your general ledger on. So the general fund is obviously your most important fund. It's always in its own column, always reported separately. We're also required to report separate columns for what are called major funds. So funds that meet certain thresholds of activity are reported on here. They're broken out for the readers of the financial statements because they're considered to be materially important to the readers. So you have your general fund, your emergency medical services fund, sale of real estate, capital plan, and your outdoor recreational facilities. And then the last column, which is called non-major governmental funds, is an aggregation of all of your smaller special revenue funds, like your revolving funds, your grants, your gifts, receipts reserved for appropriations, your non-major capital project funds, and some expendable trust funds that don't meet that threshold to be reported separately. In the general fund, There aren't a lot of differences between current year and prior year. Your revenues were, your assets actually were up just a little bit, and your liabilities were up just a little bit. But overall, the numbers are fairly consistent. And in your fund balances, if you look at your fund balances, probably the most important number to you is your unassigned fund balance. And there is a note 18 on page 40 to 42 of the financial statements that breaks out exactly what makes up each one of these fund balances. And your unassigned fund balance, which is at $3.2 million at 6/30/14, is very, very close to what it was in the prior year. And that includes both your general fund unassigned fund balance as well as two stabilization funds, your stabilization fund and your capital facilities stabilization fund, which now have to be reported as part of the general fund per GASB 54. So that's something new that happened, I think, 2 years ago. This is the second year they've been reported this way now. So that fund balance, $3.3 million, represents about 6.7% of your operating budget. So it's a healthy fund balance. It's right in the range of your policies. So it's a good, solid fund balance, and it's almost exactly the same as what your unassigned fund balance was last year at 6/30/13.
You want that to grow?
You obviously want your fund balance to grow if you can put money into unassigned fund balance, but the range, 6.7% is a stable fund balance, and it's within the range of what your goals are for your fund balance policies. So it's, absolutely good to have your fund balance growing, but, it's definitely not below the threshold that we would consider to be a problem.
So that's standard in the industry?
It's 5 to 8% is pretty standard in the industry, so you're right in the middle of that range.
So below 5%.
Below 5%, we would probably be discussing with, with your management about, plans and just keeping an eye on it and recommending that you just keep an eye on that fund balance. But it's, like I said, it's within that range.
You mentioned there was a footnote for that?
Yep, for the fund balances, note 18 on page 40 to 42, and that breaks out all of it gives a lot more detail on what is in all of those different fund balances, all of those fund balance categories. And it breaks out the two stabilization funds that are included in there as well. Moving a couple pages further to page 16 of the financial statements, which is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, otherwise known as your income statement. In fiscal year 2014, your revenues were up about almost $2 million, 49.1 versus $47.4 million in the prior year. And your expenses were up about the same, 48.8 million versus 46.4. So you did have your revenues and expenses increase. And your change in fund balance, which you see right towards the bottom of that page, you just about broke even for the year with a change in fund balance of a little over $52,000, which is actually quite good, because if you skip ahead to page 18, which is the budget versus actual, the results of your budget for the general fund, you'll see that you actually had appropriated a little over $1 million to use fund balance of a little free cash or fund balance of a little over $1 million to fund your budget. So you actually budgeted to have a little over $1 million loss. And in fact, you came in just about even, a little over $52,000. So you actually made up that funding because your budget was able to you were able to come in under budget by a bottom line of about $1.1 million, coming over on your revenues by about $600,000, and then also turnbacks in your appropriation of a little over $400,000. So you were able to make up that planned use of free cash. Any questions on any of those statements?
I'm going to save all my questions to the end.
Okay.
Excuse me, are there copies of this for anybody else to look at? It's hard to follow. mean, it's just difficult, if you're not looking at anything.
I'd like to be copies.
Sorry.
All these are posted online, just so you can review them before the meeting too. That's generally.
Thank you.
How many people like copies?
Do you want to do copies of the management letter too?
Yeah, I have that as well.
Okay. We'll wait until he gets those copies so that
Yeah, that makes sense.
you have questions.
That'd be fine.
I'm a visual learner.
I know, me too.
You too.
Have to have something in front of me to look at.
Looks like a high-speed copier out
The copy is slow. Yeah. Will it copy back to back?
Save a few trees.
The new one's in the budget for the year 2025, so we're almost there.
Somebody would check and make sure. Such a report.
Karen? What was your estimate again on the post-retirement pension contribution?
The unfunded pension?
Yeah.
It was about $28 million, and again, that's just based on, an actuarial valuation as of January 2014, so they'll be doing an updated one this year for the implementation of GASB 68,
Yep.
which is what requires you to report that on these statements. So I imagine it will change somewhat after that valuation, but that's a quick estimate.
Thank you, Bob.
Anyone else want copies of the audit? Did you have it, Dave? Okay, the management letter is being printed, so you want to continue and then
Yep,
bring
we're all
out the
set.
management letter when you, yeah.
Sure. All set?
Ladies, you all set?
Welcome.
Yeah,
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
Sorry
Go ahead,
to
Karen.
interrupt
Thank you.
everything.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
I'll print it out the next time.
Thanks, Bob. So we were on page 19, which is your proprietary fund statements. 19, 20, and 21 are your proprietary funds, which is your golf course fund, your business type activities. And the information on these statements just flows right back to that first statement we were talking about, the statement of net position. Flows right back to the business type activities column on page 12. So this is your, basically talks about assets and liabilities for the golf course and your unrestricted net position for the golf course, which at June 30, 2014 was about $158,000, which was a little bit lower than the prior year, which is about $215,000. And then if you look at the next page, page 20, you see the revenues and expenses, the income statement for the golf course fund. And remembering that this only reflects the Reedy Meadow Golf Course, because at the time that these financial statements were prepared, King Rail was still closed for reconstruction, is my understanding that it was hopefully going to reopen this spring. But so this really only reflects activity for Reedy Meadow, which was the only active golf course. There are some expenses in here for upkeep, of course, of the King Rail Golf Course, but the revenues are strictly for Reedy Meadow. So
Do you know how much was for the upkeep of?
I
King Rail?
don't know that number offhand. Julie, would you be able to get that for Tom? What you'll see on these statements that your revenues at this moment in time are not covering the full costs of the operation of the golf course, primarily because of its debt service. So you have quite significant bonds payable that were issued to pay for the golf course. And so the debt service on that at this particular moment in time is being funded by an operating transfer in from the general fund. So the $815,000 that you see down at the bottom for operating transfers in comes in for the general fund, and that helps the golf course pay for its debt service, principal, and interest on that debt. Not a lot else to say about the golf course. It's pretty straightforward, and again, the numbers are fairly comparable to the prior year. And then I'm going to skip ahead to page 22 and 23. This is your third, essentially your third set of statements, which is your fiduciary funds. And these are only reported here. They are not reported in your full accrual statements. And your fiduciary funds are the funds that you are really holding for the benefit of other parties. So you'll see here something new, which is your OPEB trust fund. In fiscal year 2014, the town set up an OPEB trust fund and began funding, putting money aside to fund that other post-employment benefits liability. So in 2014, you put $100,000 into the fund and earned a little bit of interest, which will continue to grow as you continue to fund it. And that will help to pay some of those costs that you will be paying in the future for those retirees. You also have some private purpose trust funds, which are your scholarship funds, which are for the benefit of people outside of the government. And then you also have agency funds, which are made up primarily of outside detail, like police detail and fire detail, performance bonds that you're holding for developers who are required to put a deposit down, and then their money will be refunded when a job is done, as well as your student activity funds at the high school and the middle school. That's really about all I planned to talk about in the financial statements. The notes have a lot of information that backs up the numbers on the statement. So if you have particular questions about numbers, there's usually a note that gives a little more detail on what makes up those numbers and what they are.
That's great, Karen, I appreciate it. I'll open it up to some questions. I want everybody to keep in mind, just keep the questions to the audit itself for the auditors. Remember, this goes through June 30th of 2014. I'm sure if some that don't have it in front of them, just try to keep your questions to this audit and something that the auditors have worked on. I'll open it up to my board. Have any questions? Tom, you want to start with you?
Yep, I have a few questions. A lot of these here came from, as you know, we've chatted before, and this certainly is not my field of expertise, but being a CPA, I might have a little knowledge.
Okay.
So people have come to me with questions, so the first few questions are merely me trying to get some understanding to re-explain to them.
Okay.
Okay? The first question was, in most for-profit or business financial statements, they're compared on the financial statements on a comparative basis. Could you explain why this isn't?
Because they're not required to be reported on a comparative basis in a governmental entity.
Mhm.
So generally accepted accounting principles, GASB standards do not require us to report them on a comparative basis. We can certainly do that for you if you'd like us to, going
I
forward.
just think during our conversations, you were comparing, and I was flipping through this trying to see where you were comparing.
Yeah, I had done that.
I was
It's just- Yeah.
So it might be something that
Sure.
we should probably look forward to, in the future.
Yep, we can definitely do that
I
going
might be
forward.
able to add, it's difficult to do comparative just because there's so many columns, so many different fund types,
Sure.
that Karen just went through. Typically, you'd see comparatives in what's called a CAFR, a Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. These financial statements are called the basic financial statements, and they just cover the statements that Karen just went over. But there's another version that certain municipalities have for their audit, and that's the CAFR. And it's a much more detailed financial report. Instead of being, 40 or so pages, the CAFR would be more in the 75 pages. And that has a lot of 10-year trend historical information in it,
Okay.
which is very helpful. And the bond rating agencies like to see that also, by the way.
That may be to our benefit.
Could you repeat what that was, a CAFA?
Yeah, Comprehensive
Oh.
Annual Financial Report, CAFR.
Okay. Thank you.
The next area is, from the financials that we've installed quite a few new fields. And we're gonna have some new fees coming online.
Okay.
Will that be separately stated, or how are we gonna address that issue?
New fees for,
We're gonna have user fees for the
Mhm.
fields. So how is that gonna be dealt with? As a proprietary fund, in the general fund?
we'll
How
have to have that
exactly-
discussion with Julie and with your manager, your town administrator, when we come out to do the audit. Was it accepted as an enterprise fund? Did the town set it up as an enterprise
Probably
fund? Or is
revolving.
it part of the general fund?
Probably
or
in the
in the recreation revolving? So when we have a chance to look at that and we see what it's all about, we'll have to have that conversation as to whether it meets the criteria for being reported as an
Okay.
enterprise fund, because you can report anything as an enterprise fund, but you must report it as an enterprise fund if it meets certain criteria. And the main criteria is that it is set up to be self-supporting in that it covers all of its costs, including its capital and debt service costs.
So if there was a capital allocation with each fee?
Yes,
That
and
might
if
qualify.
it were going to cover all of its debt service, if that was associated with that project, and if it was going to, it would also, you would need to allocate some of the liability for the pension and the OPEB if there are employees associated with that. A portion of all of those liabilities would need to be allocated to that fund in
Is
order
that what you're
to.
doing with the golf course right now?
There really are no, no material costs with the golf course at this moment in time.
There's no material payroll?
No, there is no material payroll because it's primarily staffed by seasonal employees who are not receiving these benefits.
Okay.
And by a full-time contract golf pro who is also not receiving these benefits.
But out of $500,000 of revenue, 300 and almost 77,000 is the expense for salaries. That is a substantial
Primarily,
number.
again, seasonal employees who are not,
But it
not-
is substantial.
right, but they're not entitled to receive these benefits, so.
Right.
That's why we don't allocate those costs.
Okay. Then at one of our town meetings, we had a little discussion on the difference in the meaning of liability versus debt.
Liability versus debt.
Right. Maybe you could try to explain that.
Well, liabilities are essentially what you owe.
Mm-hmm.
Debt, I think in most cases, you're thinking about your bonds payable. When you think about debt, you're thinking about the payments you have to make every year on your bonds payable or your bands payable, the debt that you actually issue, where you have a annual principal and interest component to be repaid. I think that's normally what people are thinking of when they think of debt, but there are also other liabilities that we talked about a little bit, like your compensated absences, which is what your employees have accrued for sick and vacation time, something you don't normally think of when you're thinking about what do I owe. So liabilities is probably a broader term than just debt is. Debt, I think, is usually, again, thought of more as, you know, what did I issue for bonds and bands?
If we look it up in FASB or GASB,
Yeah.
we find they're identical and they refer to each other.
Yes, and
So
so in
we-
our
we would
world,
have
they're
a
the
lengthy dis-
same, but, you know, I think in layman's terms, they're usually not thinking of, you know, that kind of stuff. But, you know, you also have your short-term liabilities, which is your accounts payable and your accrued payroll, the things that you are paying out currently, and those are also debt, things you owe to people
So
for
liability and
services
debt is pretty
rendered.
much what you owe.
Yes.
Okay. Another question that I have, that was asked of me is, within the school, we have what's called the quote-unquote community schools,
Mm-hmm.
which offers different venues. They offer preschool, after-school care.
Yep.
They're offering different programs over the summer. And that appears to be just blended into the schools. That's not something that should be listed separately?
No, it's actually on the financial statements for report, it's separate in the general ledger. So
Mhm.
in your general ledger, it is separate, it is a separate fund in the special revenue fund.
They're both listed.
But for financial reporting purposes, it does not meet the threshold of a major fund. The assets, liabilities, revenues, and expenses do not meet that threshold. So it's reported as part of the non-major governmental funds, along with all of your grants and gifts and lots of other funds that you have that just aren't large enough to meet that threshold.
And what would that threshold be?
It's 5% of assets and 10% of revenues, I believe,
Of all the funds.
of all funds combined.
We do list it on page 42.
For the fund balance.
Yes, you do
Yeah,
see
so
the
it is
fund
listed. It's
balance
not-
of it,
not
but
rolled
you
up
don't
into
see the
yeah.
activity. So you see that it is broken out on page 42, the fund balance in the community
Yep.
schools.
Okay. Then, someone brought to my attention, in, continuing the discussion on death, that on page 39, under the caption, current and advanced refundings, we have something here about the amount of fees, debt still outstanding at June 30, 2014 is $6,685,000.
Yes.
Could you maybe explain that for us?
Sure, that's very confusing, I'm sure. A refunding is a refinancing of debt. So you refinanced debt in fiscal year 2013. So essentially, you had bonds outstanding at a higher interest rate than the market was offering at that moment in time. So your financial advisor advised you to refinance those bonds, which you were able to do because they were callable, meaning that you were able to refinance them, which is not always the case. And you refinance them at a lower interest rate to save you money. When you refinance them, the original debt is taken off of your financial statements because the monies to pay that debt were put into an escrow account to pay the debt service on those bonds until they're callable. And because those bonds were not called before June 30, 2014, that debt is still out there and it's required to be reported in the note disclosures. But because the monies are in an irrevocable trust fund to pay that debt, in an escrow fund, you do not have to report that debt on your financial statements. What you're reporting instead is the refinance debt that replaced it.
So we are reporting this debt.
Yes, you are reporting the new debt that was issued at a lower interest rate. Correct. So if you look on page 38, where you see the different debt issues listed, you'll see the refunded school bonds down there, and those are the ones that were refinanced.
Okay. Then there's been some questions about our cable/PEG account. People have asked me, there's over $600,000 in there, and we have a continual flow of revenue. That's the revenue that we're getting that everybody pays each month that has cable in town?
It's the franchise fees. You have an agreement with your cable provider, and that agreement stipulates that there are quarterly payments that need to be made to the town based on the number of subscribers. So those are the franchise fees that are being paid to you by the cable company, as well as sometimes there's one-time capital contributions as well that go into that. And those are all reported in a special revenue fund. And I may be misremembering this, Julie, but I want to say that you were doing a new studio.
Yes.
So the funds were being accumulated to
pay for
fund a
those.
new studio.
Yes. And I also believe, I think maybe by the end of this year, the state is recommending to move those funds to an enterprise fund. So I just heard about that recently, so we may be.
So we may be reporting those differently when that kicks in.
So it certainly wouldn't fall under a material item at, was it 5%?
No, it's not material
Assets and
for
then
major
10%,
fund
right?
reporting, but you do see, again, the fund balance is reported separately on page 42. We did break it out. We broke out some of the larger special revenue funds so that you could see the fund balances in there.
So if it was an enterprise fund, it would be reported much like the golf course? So
Yes.
everybody get to see the income and the expenses?
Yes.
Okay. Another question that people have asked me is, they look at the financial statements. No one really knows what the town has in the bank, so to speak. What is the town's money?
Well, the town's money, of course, fluctuates at any given moment in time based on cash flow and what bills you're paying and what revenues are coming in. So everything is broken out by fund. So essentially the town's money is all of the money that's called cash and short-term investments and investments that are reported on your governmental funds financial statements. So your balance sheet on page 14. So the cash and short-term investments plus the investments in all of those funds would make up a portion of that. So that's cash, that's town money. And then you would have to also include the proprietary funds, the golf course.
Okay.
So cash and short-term investments on page 19 would be included as well. And then on the fiduciary funds on page 22, obviously the OPEB trust fund, it's money the town has set aside, but it's not really town money because it's going to be used. It's an irrevocable trust fund, and it can only be used to pay other post-employment benefits for future retirees. Similar to your other fiduciary funds, the scholarships and the agency funds, that's really money that you're holding for the benefit of other parties. So that really is not included as town money. So it's the governmental funds and the proprietary, the golf course.
Okay.
Or statement of net position, which combines both of those. You could look at that, and that would essentially be the town's cash as well.
Okay. Then there was, on page 27, it is item G, property and tax limitations, footnote 1.
Yep.
Received some questions about the whole levy capacity and how does that impact the town, especially, for example, when we had the fire back here within the DPW yard, we lost the building. Luckily, we had insurance to cover it. But as far as this excess capacity of $22,000, what would happen if we had, say, an emergency of $400,000? So there's a few questions rolled in there.
Okay.
One is if you could explain this capacity level, and if you could explain what the excess means, and then explain what would happen in a crisis situation.
Okay. Well, the levy capacity is essentially the maximum you can raise in property taxes. Proposition 2.5 limits the amount that any community can raise in property taxes. So you cannot go above that limit when you're raising taxes. So the excess capacity is essentially for fiscal year 2014, $22,000 is what you did not raise up to the limit of your capacity. So that tells you that you're right at your levy limit. So essentially, you raised just about everything you were legally able to raise before you reached that limit. Now, there are a couple of things, an override. If you were to override the limit, which is a permanent increase in that levy capacity, and is also debt that is voted to be excluded from that levy limit, and that is a temporary increase in the levy capacity to pay that debt until and then it expires once that debt is paid off. So you may have some debt that is excluded from that levy limit. So essentially, you cannot raise above that limit, and then once you reach that limit, you have to either reduce your appropriations or have another revenue source to cover those. So if you had an emergency situation, the first place you would go would be to either freezing your budget and hopefully freezing your appropriations and coming in under budget and making it up on the expenditure side, or you would make it up with some additional revenues in excess of what you budgeted, or you would have to appropriate free cash in order to cover that. There are some emergencies. You are obviously legally able to overexpend your snow and ice appropriation because that is an emergency that you have to, anything that affects life and limb. If you were to have a storm roll through, a tornado roll through, and you had to spend money in order to keep people safe, that would be an emergency expenditure, but you would have to raise it next year on the recap. So since you can't go over that limit, that would mean that you could spend less elsewhere on other appropriations, because no matter what happens, you eventually have to raise it. The DOR sometimes it does allow you to have a couple of years to raise that. Recently, because of the February storms, for example, they're allowing you to amortize that snow and ice deficit over a couple of years. Unusual situations like that, because they recognize that most communities are either close to or right at their levy limit, and they recognize that there needs to be some flexibility in extraordinary and unforeseen circumstances.
Are you seeing across the board most towns are just about at their levy limit?
Yeah, I think in my experience that is the case. Frank, would you say the same? Yeah.
Probably 80%.
Yeah.
80% are at their levy limit.
Yeah.
Karen, since if I might piggyback quickly on talking about other towns, how do we compare to other towns? I think one of the highlights of this report certainly was the strong financial position the town of Lynnfield is through a lot of hard work of the community over the last several years, especially the credit rating. Can you talk a little about that and what that says about the town of Lynnfield?
Sure. The town, the credit rating is also actually in the financial statements, should be in the MD&A. Just have to find the page. So on page 11, the town has, their credit rating was actually upgraded in fiscal year 2014. So the Standard & Poor's credit rating was upgraded from AA to AA+. So you essentially have the best credit rating that's available.
How difficult is it to raise it to that?
It is very difficult to get an upgrade.
Why?
Because the rating agencies, particularly now, are being more conservative, for one thing, based on what happened back in 2008, 2009. So they're looking at your financial statements, and they're looking at them very closely, and they're being careful to make sure that your numbers are strong. They're looking at your debt. They're looking at your future. They're looking at the town of Lynnfield as a whole, what kind of growth potential it has, what your population has, what your future liabilities are. They're factoring all of these things in order to come up with that rating. And they look at your free cash, your unassigned fund balance. They look at your reserves. They compare the percentage of those to your operating budget. And all of those things are factored into their rating. So the fact that your rating was upgraded in fiscal year 2014 means that the rating agencies feel that Lynnfield is stable and has a good, solid fund balance and good, solid reserves, and that they don't anticipate any issues at this moment in time when they looked at your rating. They're looking obviously out into the future. They're trying to project, and so they had a very favorable opinion in order to upgrade your rating.
Now, you said 80% of the communities go up to their levy limit. What percentage had their credit rating increased, if you could just ballpark?
That I don't know off the top of my head, but I would say that Out of my client pool, I would say maybe one
So
of
that's-
two at the most have their credit rating upgraded in a
So that's something
particular year.
Linfield
It
could look
doesn't
at.
change that frequently. So
Take pride in the fact that we were able to do a whole lot with this financial report. We have a strong financial report, and we've increased our credit rating. So this is something the town of Linfield could look at and say, we've done a great job.
Yes,
Excellent. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay.
Karen, do you have an idea of, if we want to get to that AAA rating, do you have a gauge or some sort of an idea of where we would have to be to get to that next step?
I don't offhand have a gauge. Frank, do you have any
I'd
idea?
probably say try to get your reserves, your fund balance rule. Right now, you're in a 6.5% or so. Try to get it closer to the 10 to 12%
Right.
range. The other consideration would be that CAFR that I mentioned before, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. The bond rating agencies do look upon that favorably. They feel that communities that make the extra effort to pull that CAFR document together definitely take their finances seriously, and it could be the factor that gets you to the next point.
Right.
Something also to keep in mind is that at this moment in time, the bond rating agencies are not factoring in your OPEB liability or the unfunded pension liability. Particularly the OPEB liability. The pension liability is scheduled to be funded, fully funded, by 2036, I believe it is, based on their current funding schedule, just a little over 20 years. But the OPEB liability, at this moment in time, it's not being looked at by the rating agencies. However, if enough communities begin to set aside a substantial amount of money to fund this liability, there may be a point in the future where the bond rating agencies factor that in when they're doing their rating. So any money that you can, so a community that sets up an OPEB trust fund like Linfield did last year and is at least making an effort to begin funding that liability, I believe that's also going to be favorable to the bond rating agencies as opposed to communities who are not at least making the effort to do that.
How many communities have you seen throughout the state that actually have that OPEB covered?
I would say probably about 70% of my clients have OPEB trusts.
No, I mean
Have it fully funded in the OPEB
Yeah,
trust.
fully funded, 'cause I know that's
I
very
have-
rare, but,
Yeah, it's
I don't know of
incredibly
any.
rare.
yeah. 1%,
Um,
2%?
Right.
Very
Yeah.
small, and it's things like the municipal electric utilities have fully funded their OPEB, but that's only for their employees.
Just for their section, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
or I have one particular client that has funded the town's liability, but not the school district. They have a separate school district, and they haven't funded the school district's piece of it, which is obviously quite significant.
Sure.
So I don't really know of anybody who has fully funded that liability.
The rating agencies look favorably, though, if you have a permanent funding source for
Mhm.
that. You know, I've seen some communities use the meals tax money, that whatever they collect is gonna automatically go into that. Others, if there's any leftover health appropriation at the end of the year, automatically goes into that, different things like that.
Thank you.
Now, with sticking on this OPEB issue, are you aware of any government agency or state agency that's gonna step in and take over this debt? I know this is a repetitive question. We talked about this about a year ago, but there's been some talk in this town that there's gonna be some government agency that's gonna step in and take over this debt. Therefore, we should not start funding this trust account.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, I've never heard that either.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm
Not
glad
heard
we
anything
could-
about that.
Okay.
I know
well,
that the legislature is being lobbied to change the law about the funding of the OPEB, which I believe is minimum 50%. That has to be, the minimum that the town can contribute is 50%, and I know that there are some communities that are lobbying for that flexibility on that
Mhm.
percentage,
Mhm.
but I have not heard anything about the state stepping in to take over this liability.
I just have a few more questions, if you could bear with me,
Sure.
okay? On page 32, under custodial credit risk,
Mhm.
the town, you mentioned here that the town does not have any policies for custodial credit risk. Could you explain what you mean so everybody would understand?
Custodial credit risk essentially means that your investments are held with a brokerage firm, and if that brokerage firm were to go bankrupt and go under, which is, something that we never would have thought about before 2008, you have the potential where those investments may be lost. So that's a custodial credit risk. And the town manages that by having, they're working with a broker that has SIPC and excess SIPC coverage to protect those investments. But the town does not have a formal written investment policy that details out their responses to each one of these potential investment risks.
Do you have any idea how much the town is paying in custodial or management fees for our investments?
I don't. It's usually, the investment companies do not do a great job of breaking that out on the statements.
Aren't they now required to report that?
I'm not exactly sure whether they're required to. My experience, the statements are not necessarily, it's not necessarily clear on those statements, not all of them. I don't remember offhand whether your investment advisor does a better job of that than some of them do.
I think there was a new law that was passed, and this year they have to report.
So in fiscal year 2015.
They may not like it, but
Yeah, because a
They're
lot of times
reporting.
they bury it in the
Page
returns,
32
the
in
unrealized,
the middle.
it's just called change in market value or change in value.
right.
And the fees are incorporated into that number, which includes also unrealized gains and losses.
So maybe Julie could send me the name of our investment advisor and how much we've paid to
Yeah, I
him or her.
think they're buried, just like Karen said. I can give you.
You could
give
dig
you
that
the
out,
name,
right?
But, yeah.
Okay. And I know that we're using Essex Regional Retirement System to help manage our retirement account. And it's a substantial sum of money. And I was wondering, how much are we paying them for their services?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Julie?
It's all part of the assessment.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all- I would
Which includes the,
Everything.
the actuarial costs for your retirees. It's not broken down for you how much of it represents their administrative overhead versus what's being paid to the employees.
So,
You just
so
get-
how would you
Certainly get a copy
compare-
of their annual report, though. Their
Right, and it's
their
not that
annual
frequent.
report will break out their operating expenses. Because on on the retirement system's annual report, they're required to report all of their all of their expenses in categories, so you would be able to see their operating and administrative costs on that annual
Okay.
report, which you should be able to go, if you go on the PARAC website,
Mhm.
all of their reports are usually there. You could also go on Essex Regional Retirement System's website. It should be there as well, either one of those websites. They have to report, 12/31 is usually their year ends, and they are required to file that report by May 31st. So you should be able to see that report, the most recent one, the 12/31/14 should be coming out very shortly.
So when we make contributions to them, we're not sure what percentage is going to administrative fees versus,
No, because you're just
Contribution
a
to
small
benefits?
part of a very large pool. So all of the money, they have assessments. Assessment letters go out to all communities. Linfield is a relatively small percentage of the pool, 8% roughly, of contributions of the whole retirement system. And they don't break out, they just pool the monies, and you're assessed based on your population, and they don't break out those costs by member communities.
is that something you could get us, Julie?
I mean, I have from Essex, the pool she's talking about, and they do just as Karen says. They have all the members, they have a total amount, and you pay your percentage of the pool.
So what is that number?
Like the latest actuarial I have is 7.35%. I think this was for FY 14's appropriation.
So
think it's
7.35% of the funds that we give to them is for administrative costs?
No.
No.
7.3% is your
Okay.
portion of the entire retirement system pool.
For our
So,
assessment.
of
our
their whole
assessment.
annual assessment, Linfield's is about 7.3% of their total annual assessment.
Right.
So relatively, you have relatively few employees that you're
Right.
being assessed for, because you're a relatively small portion of that pool.
And so what is the cost?
It's, in 2014, it was 1.9 million
And we're 7.35%
of
of that.
the, yeah.
No. Was that
Our
your
total
assessment?
cost, Linfield's total cost was 1.9.
So your assessment was 1.9 million. And in that assessment is a small portion of the retirement system's operating and maintenance costs, obviously.
Right. So
Of
we haven't
course.
inched any closer to what that magic number is.
No, we
Sort
don't.
of feel
We
we're
don't
talking
have
around.
those
It's the actuaries that, they determine what the total costs of the retirement plan are, including what's being paid out to retirees currently, what's going to be paid out into the future, because you're on a funding schedule to
Right.
pay that. And it includes all the administrative costs also.
The real question is it cost effective to be with this organization, or should we be looking at alternatives? That's the real question.
I don't think we have a choice. And we have a representative on their board, Joe Maney.
Mm-hmm.
This is dictated by legislation.
But there are situations where communities leave systems also and join others or go on their own.
Is there a bid process for that? How does that work?
It's a legal process, my understanding. I believe the state legislature would have to go along with it, but I'm guessing now.
And if you have any collective bargaining units, they would have to be involved as well, because that's all part of their benefit package,
Okay.
so it would be a process.
Great.
Aren't there something like 104, something like that, retirement systems in Massachusetts?
Yes.
Yes, there are a lot, and,
Yes.
you know, I can only speak to my experience of auditing retirement systems. Their operating and administrative costs are generally very small. Obviously, the largest cost they have is the benefits they're paying to the retirees, as well as the actuarial accrual of their future retirees. So, their operating and administrative costs, their overhead is usually quite small.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if we have anybody in the audience that has any questions, this is time to ask. Katie?
Sure.
Yeah, I think actually on the microphone is going to answer the question. I think it's pretty easy. Hi, my name is Katie Shea, and the question I have is on page, let's see, page 14. It talks about, it says, notes receivable, $900,000, and it's under the governmental funds.
Yes.
I was just wondering, what is that?
That is a receivable from Life Linfield Initiative for Elders
Okay,
for land that the town deeded to Life for an elderly housing, Colonial
Village.
Village?
Yes.
Colonial Village development of elderly housing.
okay,
So the town deeded that property to Life to develop it, and Life in turn is paying the town. So there's a promissory note, and it should have been paid, Julie, was
Yeah,
it paid?
we've been receiving 18,750 per unit sold. I think they owe us about for 2 units,
okay,
but
that's good.
we've received everything else.
Okay,
besides that.
thank you. And then the other one on page 14, other liabilities, 625,909. I was just
That
wondering.
is employee withholdings. So as of June 30th, that's what had been withheld, but had not yet been paid out for employees, you know, federal, state taxes, retirement, things that just hadn't been, just a timing issue.
Okay, great, thank you. Then the other one on page 14 was the assigned, the 1,105,105.
So if you look at page 42, I believe it is, that has the detail of what makes up those fund balances.
Mhm.
It's made up of encumbrances.
Okay.
We've got $166,000 in encumbrances.
Mhm.
And then $939,000 appropriated fund balance, and those are the appropriations that do not lapse at year end. So when you appropriate money for an article, and that article is going to continue for a year or more,
Gotcha.
that money has been set aside to fund that purpose, and so
Okay.
it has to be reserved.
Okay. And then another question that I have is on the management report, we talk about controls. and we talk about.
Katie, excuse me, Katie, do you want to go over that report before we start talking about it? Yeah, Katie, why don't we
All
wait
right,
on that?
all right.
Why don't we let her go, because we haven't gotten to that report yet. Does
Okay.
anyone else have any questions
All
on,
right,
on
thank
the
you. Thank you
audit
very
itself? Heather?
I do.
Heather, why don't you come up to the microphone, so. You do? Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm Heather Keene. I have a simple question. In general layman's terms, and based on your professional opinion for the taxpayers or attendees who may not be well-versed with the financial terms you are speaking of, what are the top 3 areas of concern you have for the town's future budget? I'm also curious to hear what our town officials think and what their concerns or recommendations may be. It's a loaded question, but some people that may be here or maybe watching TV, well, oh, we don't have TV, but
Maybe watching it later.
maybe later. Just curious what you think, and I'd like to know what everyone up here thinks, where the future is, with where the town is going. Real simple, not to digress into anything major, but high level.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Well, my main concerns as an auditor would be the OPEB liability and the unfunded pension liability, because those are your 2 largest liabilities. And so, as an auditor, that would be my main concern. And so it's obviously an issue that's shared by all municipalities in Massachusetts.
And I echo that. I think that's the biggest concern everybody has in this state, not throughout the country, is the OPEB and pension liability, so.
Yeah, how are you going to fund what you've promised to pay for
Correct.
your current employees when they retire in the future?
I mean, it's been devastating to other states. Obviously, we're in better financial condition than most, and I think it's something we gotta keep an eye on and start to develop a plan on how to tackle it. The pension has been dealt with.
The pension has been dealt with, and it's got a 20-year funding schedule, so it'll be built into your annual assessments, and if that funding schedule holds, it will be fully funded by 2036.
Right, but the OPEB's more of a systemic problem. It isn't something that the town of Lynnfield can resolve, but we certainly have to be able to cover the continuing growing liability that we're gonna have to cover. So that's more our concern, because it's just like a big mortgage that we have, and that's how we pay it.
And remember, that's mandated by the state law. You can only control it up to a certain point, because the state law mandates that you pay a minimum of 50% of those costs for the premium of your retirees for health insurance costs. So Lynnfield has done a lot by going with the GIC to save money. All employees who are 65 years or older are now going on Medicare to help that. So, there are some steps that have been taken, but again, that is, you're hampered somewhat by the law being what it is, and you can't circumvent the law.
I'd like to answer your question as well, Heather. The OPEB, has been an issue of mine for a year or 2 now. So that's always been on my radar. It's a significant number. It's a significant concern of mine. As you can see from the questions tonight, a few of them were about OPEB. And so I have a very big concern for that. As a matter of fact, I spoke with our new town administrator about it. And one of your thoughts, sir, on the allocating meals tax to go to permanently funding the OPEB, we've discussed in private, not in public, but it is something that I would fully support. We should look at something to start permanently funding that, so we start dwindling down on that balance. It's such a large sum of money that I don't think any town is going to just write out a multi-million-dollar check to try to get some control. That's small control, not even a big control on that number. A second issue would be, I'd like to expand our financial statement to that CAFR, so that might offer the readers a better understanding as to our situation. I think that's very critical. And lastly, we should start increasing our cash reserves. There are certain things that we need to spend for. There's certain inherent in problems that we have in town. We have Arthur here who's been working kindly for on the fields for the past couple of years. That our fields were a disgrace. People coming here, we're looking at it and we're astonished. We're town of Lynnfield, and we have some blades of grass with a lot of dirt and stone. Really a concern. So I think we're grabbing hold of bigger issues, and it comes at a cost, and people are voting for this, and they want these addressed. So that affects my last item, which is the cash reserves, which I'd like to see them grow, but I think we have to balance the cash reserve growth with big issues that we need to resolve. And that'll be the delicate part. We're trying to increase our bond rating so that we get better rates and also better servicing our community.
Yeah, there's absolutely no downside to increasing your fund balance reserves.
I think we share the same concerns. I think the community shares the concerns. I think that's the reason we have such a strong financial position. And I think, as Tom said, they're a little bit of the credit rating. The fact we've been able to increase it to a AA+, we're looking at a AAA rating right now. I think a whole lot of communities would love to have that opportunity.
Absolutely, and
I
it saves
think-
you a lot of money.
I think it's, to answer Heather's question, I think we're moving in a positive direction, but we're also acknowledging the fact that we certainly have this debt and these liabilities we have to look at, but it's good that we have the strong financial position to make those tough decisions.
Right, and again, Linfield did begin to look at that OPEB by setting up a trust, which not all of our clients have done, and putting some money into that trust. So that's a proactive thing that not all of our communities have done yet. So you're to be commended for taking that step and being proactive in at least beginning the process, because it is a process, it takes time.
Karen, why don't we move along to the,
We had another question.
Mrs. Campbell?
Katie does.
Yeah, I just have a quick one.
Patricia Campbell. I'm looking at what adds to the funds, the post-retirement fund, both the pension and health care. And my concern is the effect that constantly hiring new employees and at the same time giving present employees 13% raises, 8% raises, 5% raises, because obviously that adds to our obligations. If you would comment on that, I would appreciate it.
I can't obviously specifically comment on Linfield's payroll, but what I can say is, and I also want to remind you that a large portion of Linfield's payroll is your schools, your teachers, and they are not part
That's
of
right.
your
I'm a teacher.
retirement
I
system.
know.
So that's a liability
also
that's paid by the Mass
level
Teachers
at 2%
Retirement
though.
System, so.
I think that's a big difference.
Just in case there was that, but, obviously payroll is the main factor in, when the actuaries are looking at what your liability is, they're obviously looking at your payroll. They're looking at how many employees are in the system, how many employees are projected to be in the system and receiving benefits upon retirement, what their payroll is, what their cost of living increases would be, what their mortality rates are. All of that factors into your liability. So yes, if you have more employees on the payroll, your liability is going to be larger, but I can't comment on whether Linfield has an appropriate or inappropriate number of employees.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question, Mr. Crawford?
Go ahead.
Presently, we have fundraising going on for the fields, for the middle school fields, in the form of soliciting money from benefactors, let's put it that way. The money is presently being held in one of the town's 501c3 organizations. And I would like to know if that is okay. Is there a preferable way of handling the funds that are being raised for the fields?
There is no preferable way. Having it in a nonprofit 501c3 corporation, which is separate from the town of Linfield, is absolutely appropriate and okay. It means that the board members of that nonprofit corporation are the ones who make the decisions on how that money is spent, and it is not under the purview of the town of Linfield. The board members will not be making the decisions on how that money gets spent. So if the money were being donated to the town of Linfield and were being held in a gift fund or a trust fund, depending on how that was being handled, then the board would obviously have more say on how that money was expended. So that's the main difference, is the board members of that organization, based on its bylaws, would be the ones making those decisions.
Thank you, Karen.
Can I have
Yeah. Let's please just keep the question to the audit.
There's a mic right
There's a
beside
mic
you.
right next to you.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, just, thank you.
Thank you. Michael Craffey. Karen, I understand these were prepared in connection with gas accounting.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. But as I understand, based on your review, there's roughly $35 million of pension costs that aren't included on here, and, or no, $35,000 of healthcare, million of healthcare, and $28 million of pension costs that's not on here, for a total of $63 million, that if this was a for-profit, and I know it is, and I understand the difference between the two, that's not on this liability, this balance sheet, correct?
Correct, at this time.
This time. And I
Yes.
understand what's happening next year, and I understand the phasing. So technically, if we reformat this, we only have, if you look at our balance sheet, our net position shows that we're 48 million ahead, but if we added the liabilities that aren't on here, the town actually has a negative net position of $15 million.
That's correct, depending on what those liabilities are when they are required to be reported. That
Right, but
will,
if you were doing a balance sheet, which is a snapshot, technically this town's in a negative position of $15 million.
that's,
If all the liabilities were
yeah,
put
rough
on
estimate
here.
of what the liabilities that are not required to be reported yet.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just one more question. I want to move along to this. We got people waiting on this agenda tonight, so just one more, Cameron. Katie.
Okay. What I want to ask is on the, when we look at the golf course, we have principal payment on bonds of $534,000. Does this include interest?
No, the interest is right here under interest expense.
Okay, so
So
809,
that's
okay.
principal and interest is broken out.
Okay, and then I'm just going to
So
sneak,
this in total is the cash.
are cities and towns starting to fund OPEB every year, even if it's a small contribution? Are they getting disciplined to try to put some money in there?
Yes, in my experience, the clients who set up an OPEB trust do fund it every year. They
Okay.
appropriate some portion of money, or again, they have a dedicated revenue source that just automatically gets transferred into that fund
Okay.
annually.
And Jim, did we do it this year?
No, it was my position, because the budget was substantially done when I got here, that we would do an appropriation in the fall town meeting, and there will be a line item for the fiscal 17 budget that will be for OPEB.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Karen, so if you want to go over the management letter at this point, and we'll take questions
Sure.
on that afterwards.
Okay, the management letter is fairly small this year. There's only 2 comments. Improving controls over departmental receipts. This is just a couple of issues that are still or remained unresolved as of June 30, 2014. They may have been resolved by now. But again, this is just, and some of these things are hard to resolve because of staffing issues, but a few recommendations that we have in order to increase the internal controls, strengthen the internal controls over cash receipts at the golf course. And I might add that there are no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies on this management letter. We as auditors are required to report material weaknesses and significant deficiencies in internal control. We're not really required to report these other comments, but we do them in order to provide you with information to help you strengthen your internal controls. So again, that's just something the town has been working on.
Right.
And then the second comment is contracting for an audit of the student activity funds. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education published new guidelines for the audits of student activity funds in 2014, late 2014. So going forward, all student activity funds need to be audited in compliance with these guidelines. And the town of Lynnfield has contracted with us to audit their high school in FY15. We'll be doing that this summer. I believe your school business manager is going to do an internal audit of the middle school, which has far less activity. And then every 3 years, the DESE recommends an external audit So we will be doing the high school this year, which has significantly more activity, and then the middle school probably the following year.
Great, thank you. Jim, could you give us just a quick overview on what the new accounting policies and the renovations we're doing with the accounting system with the golf course?
We've worked with Julie and with Donnie. We're putting in a new POS system at the golf course to track all the cash and the credit cards, so that we'll have a better understanding of what's coming and where it's coming. And that's going to connect into our system, Julie? Is that
Yes,
so?
I think that should be up probably sometime in June.
So
June.
this will be a brand new system that'll give us a much better handle on how we track those.
And that'll pretty much coincide with hopefully the opening
With
of
the opening of King Rail. Yeah.
We'll get that up and
Yeah,
online again.
we've also had several pointed conversations with Donnie that he needs to go back and make sure his employees are charging the accounts correctly when they ring in sales, and he's brought that back to them, so hopefully between the two of them, those issues will go away.
Is the point of service change, is there gonna be a new computerized system that they're gonna be using, or how?
I think they're gonna get an upgrade to what they have at, over at Reedy Meadow, and then they'll have a new system
Down at King Rail.
at King Rail.
Okay, great. I know Karen and I spoke about that last year, too. We had the same discussion, and we knew it was coming, but it took another year to get the King Rail back
Yeah,
online.
these things take
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
and this is certainly not unusual. This is definitely something that is fairly common. And again, it's not a material weakness, not a significant deficiency, just something we think we wanted to bring to your attention.
Great. Any other questions?
Is this something that was here before,
The golf course?
the golf course issues?
Yes, if you see a status of prior year recommendation, that
Mhm.
means that it was on last year's management letter as well.
So how many years has this been going on?
I don't know offhand. I think
Second
just this
year.
second year.
Second year?
I went and worked with them last year and, told them, what they needed to do. They have an issue with sometimes only having a couple employees, so it's hard to do a segregation of duties with the receipt collection and the deposit process. But I think we have a schedule worked out that they're gonna be able to do that. And also with using the cash register, people come and they say they're gonna pay cash, and then they change their mind and say they're gonna use a credit card, and they weren't always voiding it out and re-entering it. So now I've explained to them how important that is, and I'm gonna go back there and make sure they're following this protocol, and also established a cash over and short sheet for them. So they seem very understanding with the new procedures, so I'll be going back there probably sometime in June, just to make sure.
Isn't there a Z out to tie out their cash register each day? not each shift?
They do have a form that ties it out. So it
Okay.
would give the breakdown
you have
of
that.
cash and the credit card,
Right.
but it would be off because they wouldn't correct it.
But the total would be there,
Yes,
right?
yeah, the total
So
is
is there
fine.
ever a
It's
cash overage or shortage?
very small amounts. We want them to just track that.
Is it mostly over, mostly under, does it fluctuate?
We've never kept an over and short on a
So we don't
daily
know.
log, but
Okay, I mean, in any cash business, we all know as CPAs, we don't like to see overages. Ever. Because that's the money that someone couldn't take out of the till. So I would be very alarmed if we were seeing that frequently, as I'm sure you would. So I hope that, we certainly start monitoring that. I'm not saying that anybody over there is doing anything wrong, but I think a good set of internal controls where there's cash is extremely important.
I think anything in
And we
Linfield.
should have probably addressed this sooner.
well, I mean, we do a periodic check of certain days, and then the cash comes in through the treasurer, and she makes sure that the cash ties out.
Okay. But that's a concern of yours as well, I would assume.
Which is why we repeated it on the management
Yeah.
letter, because cash is obviously the riskiest
Mhm.
area. Anytime there's cash, you have a risk, and the golf course does collect quite a lot of cash because of the nature of the business.
So what is there, many people that work in the clubhouse, ringing people in, or?
There's not too many people that do the cash out process and the deposit process. There's 3 altogether.
What about the ring-up process? Who does that? Is it just the
Some of
golf pro?
those individuals, and I don't know if how many seasonal. I don't think too many.
I would think the seasonal people are out on the lawnmower, wouldn't you think?
No, there's some seasonal people
That
are
work in the
pro shop.
clubhouse?
Yeah, especially probably on the weekends, but I think one of these individuals are there at the end of the day to cash
Mm-hmm.
out.
And who has the override to the management of the soft POS? Because they can manipulate the sales.
Right. Well, right now they have a cash register.
Well, that'll be part of the new system we put in and how it's gonna be managed.
I'm sure maybe just Julie would have that option, if that.
Yeah,
That has
they
to
have
come
a
from the selectmen.
Right.
POS system now.
They have a POS system
Yes,
now?
yes.
So why is it such a mess?
It's not a mess.
It's not.
They just have
Well,
to
we
make a
have-
couple of minor
We have this
changes.
management letter which says it is.
Well, she didn't say it was a mess, she just said it could be improved.
Yeah, it can be improved.
There's nothing
and-
wrong with it.
And notice we're saying that, a lack
course
of
there's something.
segregation is very common in smaller departments that have limited staff. And also, employees are not consistently entering the correct payment method, which means when we tested, there were some times it was correct and then there were some errors that had been made. So we were just recommending that they have more training so that they understand how important it is that if a customer pays in cash, that they hit the right button that says cash payment versus credit card payment, so that there is a strong audit trail over those currency receipts. And, that's our main concern, because there is, an audit trail over credit cards. That's not as big of a concern, so it's mostly making sure that cash is as tight as it can possibly be. And there's never 100% security with cash. There just can't be. And you also have to weigh the costs and the benefits. So the town has to weigh, the benefits of strengthening internal controls versus the costs of, managing the way that they're doing things. So you can never have 100% assurance.
Right.
Jim, do you have some, a training session that you're gonna have planned with the new system once it gets installed with the employees? Yeah. Yeah, okay, thank you.
So wouldn't this be more like if we have, first we should stop by limiting who has access to the register. Shouldn't be anybody that works at the golf course, maybe 1 or 2.
It's just a few. I mean, I don't know. I know a minimum of 3, but I would have to speak with Don Lyons to
Okay.
get this. specific.
Yeah,
'Cause usually
obviously,
when you think about a
yes.
restaurant, everybody has their own code, and you're zeeing out each person individually so you can see where the problems are.
Right.
And I don't think that.
I don't know if your system
the
is that.
risk versus reward on internal controls issue, I'm not sure that you and I could agree on that. I'm not saying that we should go spend $1 million to go find
And that's what I'm saying
$100.
is,
However,
yeah.
However, the certain simple controls can be put in at 0 cost.
Right, which,
Quick training for 2 hours, show them how to Z out, have someone here review it. If there's a problem, get back to them a little more timely so they can understand where they're going awry.
which is what Julie and Jim have been doing, is getting to that point where they understand how important this is.
Excellent. So it is important. Okay, great.
Chris, questions, comments?
I think just the on the student activity funds, that was just the Department of Education with the new guideline, and we're just reacting to that.
Yes.
Anybody in the audience have a comment, question on the management letter? All set? Karen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Those of you waiting, thank you for your patience. Next on the agenda, we have the public hearing for the wine and beer restaurant license application for Muse Paint Bar at 600 Market Street, Suite 1130. And who do we have representing? Sir? Tell us who you are and...
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, Attorney Mark Vaughn with the law firm of Reamer Bronstein here tonight representing Muse Paint Bar. Very pleased to be before you. In the interest of time, I know you have a long agenda. We'll try not to bog you down too much, but with me is Stan Finch, who is president of Muse Paint Bar. And we're very excited to be here in connection with their interest in occupying space at Market Street, Linfield. Obviously, a very successful development in town that they are looking to occupy a portion of the second phase of that development. Small portion of space, about 2,600 square feet in size. A little bit about Muse Paint Bar. They are a painting instruction studio, which we feel will be a nice complement to the existing businesses, both retail and restaurants that exist at Market Street. Just their concept is that they have about 10 to 15 painting sessions per week, mostly nights and weekends, during which an instructor is up on a platform and they kind of engage the audience in turning blank canvases into pieces of art. And it's a very popular concept, one which I've had the good pleasure of working with Stan and his firm at other locations, including Patriot Place and down at the Shipyard in Hingham as well. And they have public sessions and also private events as well for corporations, parties, work events, and kid-oriented events as well. So as part of this, Mr. Chairman, they are seeking a beer and wine license, as their experience has shown that for many of their customers, the ability to enjoy a glass of wine or beer during the session adds to the overall experience. As you might imagine, there's not a lot of alcohol served. It's really just meant to be an amenity for the customers of the facility. I think on average it's about 1.2 drinks per customer.
That's right.
But you know, I know they're very excited about being here
Sure.
in Linfield. And Stan, I don't know if you want to add anything or.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just to echo that, you know, we like this center a lot. Like the look and feel of it, like the co-tenants that are there. We have a couple of centers, Patriot Place, Blueback Square, and West Hartford, that are similar in tenant makeup and have a lot of outdoor activity and very family friendly, and we tend to do very well there. So, yeah, I'm happy to answer any more specific questions you guys might have.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. And
And I have some kind of pictures of our space and some things like that to look here in case you guys are curious about.
how long has this concept been out there? I mean, it's new to me.
Yeah, it's more prevalent throughout the South and in parts of the Midwest. So there's probably 15 years. Some of the bigger players are based out of New Orleans, Houston, and are mostly franchises. So it's, you know, we're the biggest player in New England and sort of down to the tri-state area.
Sure.
But it's not that, you know, it's not that mature of a concept at this point.
Yeah, I see you have the way you, the plot plan we have here is, you have 3 rooms set up.
That's right.
One larger room, medium and small, obviously all for different size parties.
That's right.
Is there a bar in each room? I can't tell if the
There's
small.
just one bar. There's just one bar where you can go and order drinks, you can order
Okay.
food, ask for information about when you can sign up for a class.
Okay.
It's just kind of a
So that
central
small bar
command
area in the large room is the only bar in?
Yeah, it's
That's
the
right.
kind of the curved feature there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether there was something smaller in the other rooms. That's good. So it's really just, like you said, it's an amenity. It's not.
Yeah, there's food service.
Drink, it's-
Right,
it's
there's
what
food
they have
service
with-
as well, which obviously you have a common victular license application before the board as well. So we do offer food service as well for patrons. You know, the typical session, I think, lasts a couple hours, I think, the painting session.
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours,
We have
yeah.
some specialty sessions where you can come and paint your pad or your house, things like that, where it's a little bit more customized, and the kind of artist to customer ratio is a little bit different and might take 3 to 4 hours instead. But for the most part, it's you know, about 2 hours of instruction, finish up, take some pictures, and then finishing up. Night sessions usually finish up sometime around 10, 11 at the very latest.
Great. Well, I see that you have, there's an artist stage in each room, and that's the instructor up there?
That's right.
That's
right.
going through everything? That's great.
And it's about a foot-high stage. It's not.
Yeah, it's just a little
just
elevation.
Exactly.
Well, the biggest concern, obviously, we're gonna have is when you're serving the alcohol, that all the employees are served safe or tip certified. I noticed in your packet.
Sure.
That is true.
Yeah.
And that the safety for everyone involved, and there's also you know, where you're gonna have a family-friendly area that everyone is cognizant of who's being served and who isn't.
Sure.
And that the children or younger adults are being watched. That, you know, in any, you know, in that whole area up there, there's several full alcohol licenses, a couple of beer and wine licenses. We certainly want to make sure everybody follows the same pattern on you know, the serve safe and tips. So
Sure.
I see this, is there gonna be any patio area? You're not gonna have anything outside at all? Okay.
We might hold a couple of special events outside where we would not serve alcohol. But just to generate some buzz, maybe some kids camps type thing out there, but it's not, it won't be standard, and, you know, we'll work with the center, you know, as to when we do them and what times of day they are and things like that.
What kind of menu do you have for the food items? That's that kind of entails?
Is it in there? It's tapas style, so it's kind of cheese plates, hummus platters, things like that. Yeah, it's either heat and serve or things that are cold plates that we can prepare within about 5 minutes.
Finger foods.
Exactly.
All finger food,
exactly.
yeah. All right. Well, I think it's a great concept. I wish you the best with it. I mean, I really do. I hope it works out well. And I think it's going to be very popular because it gives another activity up there for people to come do.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know some of those other type of plaster places and stuff like are family friendly, and the kids like doing them. They do birthday parties and things. So
Sure.
hopefully this will be along the same idea. Maybe more of an adult crowd at more times.
Sure.
But that'd be great.
Unlike Phil, I've actually participated in some of these
Yeah.
paint bar elements.
Oh, have you?
Is this concept? Because I've seen they've moved restaurant to restaurant. Are you the
Yeah,
first?
we do not do that. We have our own studios. Paint
So is
night.
this the first one? Because I haven't. This is the first I've seen the concept that's actually dedicated to an actual establishment.
Yeah, there are others out there. There's not a lot of them around here, but Paint Night is the big player where they move kind of bar to bar, and we've dabbled in that, but we don't think that we're going to do it anymore.
But you certainly mentioned children. You certainly will have activities. I've done frozen paint with
Yeah.
my kids, so I think
Nice,
that might be
nice.
another excuse to get out. But so you have an element for family-friendly activities.
Yeah, we have, depending on our studios, we have anywhere between 2 and 5 kind of family days per month, and kids can come to any session, but those are more geared towards kids and families. We have paintings that are a little bit simpler. The playlist is a little different. They're usually during the day, 1 p.m. on a Sunday type thing.
Like middle school, high school age.
We don't do as much of that. There, about 90% of our customer is female, but there's younger kids that tend to like it a little bit more. I think that age they tend to get too cool for it, and then it becomes okay again. When they're in college and beyond, I think.
Okay. Tom, any question?
Yeah, I think it's a great concept. I've seen it a few times in a few different restaurants that I was at, and everybody seemed to be having a whole lot of fun. No one was really focused on the beverages or the food. They were very focused on the canvas and what they put in the paint in the right spot. But they were all having fun, and I'm sure that's what this is about.
Yeah.
Getting people together, maybe relieving some anxiety, and painting.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe doing something that at least I know for myself I'm not that good at, but in the social environment, have a few laughs, and you pass the night, and
Right.
everybody has a good time.
Yeah.
Work off
I
the
think
stress of an audit report, for example, right? There you go, yeah.
Well, we are going to check the paintings on the way out.
You can watch the Selectmen paint some night.
Yeah.
Maybe we can give out a ribbon. That's one.
I'm in.
So,
More than 1.2 drinks.
I think it's
I'll paint a stick person for you.
I think it's a great concept. I did have a question. Your application, it really doesn't make a difference to me, but looking at, I don't know what page number it is, under license, section 9, state of incorporation is Mass. Aren't you a foreign entity?
We are a Delaware LLC. That's right.
Right. So
This might just be.
I don't know if you want to update that, but
Okay. Thank you.
I'm certainly
Sure.
all in favor of this. As a matter of fact, I'd be happy to make a motion to approve your wine and beer restaurant license application for Muse Paintball at 600 Market Street, Suite 1130.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Best of luck with it.
Thank you.
We're gonna do one more.
Yeah, we
stay
do.
right there, we got the next one.
Right.
Yeah.
Just the other is the common victual license, as we mentioned, there are some light fare that would be served for customers and patrons. We actually, I have a menu if you'd like to see it, but I think it's consistent with what Stan had mentioned before. And similarly, there's a weekday entertainment license application, which, as we understand it, pursuant to the town of Linfield requirements, whenever you have background music in an establishment, that constitutes entertainment. That's all that you'd be seeing here. There's no live entertainment or anything of that nature, so it would simply be background music that's played.
Okay, well, we can take one at a time. I think the common vic license is something we don't really have to discuss much. I'd take a motion to.
I'll make a motion to approve the common victular license for the weekday entertainment license for Muse Paintball.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, that was just the common vic. I wanted to take that first. And then the weekly entertainment, the only thing I really wanted to say on that is just, it's all inside the location?
It is.
You don't have a patio or anything, so nothing's getting out?
No.
All right, 'cause
Sonos speakers,
Right.
Play 5 models, we'll have one in each room.
okay. And it's more background music, so it's not, you're
That's
not
right.
blasting it to a crowd. So I don't think there's gonna be much issue there. We always have concerns for your neighbors up there and the neighbors that have residences not far away. So we'd like to make sure that stays at a level that's tolerable for everybody. So it sounds like your environment's not gonna go outside your four walls anyway. So I think you're fine. So again, I'd take a motion to approve that also.
They approved both.
No,
Did the
no, I
victual
did.
and
I
weekday.
wanted to do them separately. So
So I'll make a motion to approve the weekday entertainment license application for Muse Paintball.
I second that.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Gentlemen,
Good luck.
best of luck
Have
with it.
fun.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Appreciate it. Thanks. I do. Yeah.
I didn't even see I thought you were gonna. Must be a reason.
Okay, next on the agenda is the automatic amusement license application for the Kings Bowl Market Street. Thank you for waiting, Steve and Aaron, correct?
Yes.
All right,
Good evening.
evening.
Good evening.
So tell us what you would like to do.
I believe you guys have a sketch that was sent for us. It's pretty basic. We're just changing the space down at the end that I'm sure you've most seen at one point or another. Just reconfiguring it, moving around some stuff in the bocce area for the most part.
And you're gonna put a coin-operated air hockey table? Yeah, so just another amenity there, something else to play?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And are you taking anything else out that was there already, or are you just making room for it?
The bocce court as it stands won't be the bocce court anymore.
Okay.
We'll just reconfiguring that area down there. There's nothing else
Yeah,
that's coming
bocce
out.
wasn't a popular game for everybody to go out and play?
It has its moments.
That was the one I liked.
I remember when it first went in, everybody gave it a try, and I don't know if anybody went back and tried it again afterward, but, yeah. This'll get a lot more play.
Yeah, I think it's
guarantee
gonna be a fun little spot.
These, and you just want to put one in for now, correct? You're just gonna put one game in for now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The-
okay.
the- yeah.
Well, I don't have any issues with this, so much really to talk about. It's certainly a good addition for what you have there, and, I'd certainly take a motion to approve the air hockey table.
I'll make a motion to approve the automatic amusement license application for Kings Bowl.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Enjoy it.
Thank you.
Have fun with the air hockey.
The next item is our request for extended hours for a single-day event, also at Kings Bowl.
Didn't want to assume, so I was
Well,
going like I was
uh,
going to sit
I
down.
wanted to make you walk all the way back to your chair before I announced it.
So, as we had done last year, we have a school that's approached us to run an alcohol-free graduation party. This one going to be on the evening of Sunday, June 7th. We're typically open till 11 o'clock. The request that we have before the board today is to be able to house this party until 1 a.m. There'll be no alcohol served during that time. Nobody else will be allowed in the venue. We have affidavits from the school in regard to the student to chaperone ratio. Happy to answer any questions or any thoughts you have.
Yeah, I went through this earlier. It says it has 12 to 15 parent chaperones, about 175 students. And that's certainly easily handled in your capacity in there. They're going to be bussed in here. This is a part of a all-day event for the graduates.
Right. As I understand it, they go to one place and then to another place, like in hour blocks. I'm not quite sure exactly where their tour is prior to us.
Yeah, it doesn't say. It doesn't say on there. It just says they're coming from another event. But, so they're all coming in buses.
That's correct.
Correct, with the chaperones, and they'll be leaving in the same buses with the chaperones?
That's correct.
That's the way I understand, okay. Yeah, and Newburyport. Newburyport. And so they will also, you'll be serving food?
Right.
Light beverages?
Catered style food that's
yeah.
been pre-ordered and soft drinks pretty much only.
Yeah, okay, great. And there'll be one detailed police officer there?
That's our intention right now. I believe Chief Breen is on board with that as well.
Okay, great. Well, I think it's a nice event. I think wish I knew what all the other events were, what they're doing for the whole thing. Seems like it looks like they do this every year at Newburyport. I don't know what the whole day entertains.
And maybe I'll see if I can get you a sneak peek.
But that's it seems like they put on a pretty nice program for the kids, so. Any other questions?
I agree. I think this is a great concept. Keep the kids safe, let them have fun. My only concern is last year we had a similar situation with Hamilton Wenham, and they had one chaperone for every 10 students.
Yes, sir.
They have an awful lot of students in one location with only 10, 15 chaperones. I think that's a little low. I'd like to see a 1 to 10 ratio, if we could do that. Because if something should go haywire, which I don't know how it could, but since they're all just having tonics, and it looks like they're examining everybody's bags and what have you, so.
Well, the other thing I would add as well is, in addition to their own chaperones, I'm sure you know how we are. I'll have my own security there as well. So, in addition to our service staff, in addition to our management staff, we also have security staff. There's a lot of us as well as a lot of them.
Right.
I'm happy to approach them to see if they can decrease that number to get closer to that 10. But we do have some additional support available for them also.
And I'm sure you had that the year before for Hamilton Wenham, right?
Yes.
And I believe Hamilton Wenham, they took down one of their own local policemen last year.
I believe that was the intent, but I don't think it ended up working out that way.
Oh, really? You didn't show?
Right. We had Linfield.
Someone from Linfield
Yeah.
come? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think historically, it's in particular up at Market Street, that the King's establishment has the best security, without question. I mean, it's very well handled in there. And what's your capacity in that venue?
I believe the net is 420.
Yeah. So this from what that can take, this is a third of what you could actually
Really,
put in.
and really, I don't even necessarily need to open, and I think if I remember how this is going to flow, like that whole lounge area that in the front, is not even going to be open, so it's actually going to be even more contained, because the space that we have with the concourse and the Kingpin Room is more than enough space for the amount of kids that they have, so, Hamilton Wenham ended up spreading out a little bit, because it was a little bit bigger party.
Yeah.
But this one's a little bit more contained again, so we're as you contain the building a little bit, it just easier and easier to control.
Will the private lanes be open, or?
Yeah, the lanes on both sides.
And the large one,
Yeah, the lounge area itself, though, I don't believe is going to be necessary.
Great. Chris, any questions?
Nope.
No? Okay. I'll take a motion if,
I'll make a motion to allowed the single-day event, but I'd like to see the chaperone-student ratio get as close as we can to 1 to 10 versus 1 to 15.
I will approach the school on that.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good luck with it.
Thank you, John.
Good luck, have
Enjoy the
fun.
rest of your evening.
Next item, we have the Tricentennial Committee donation, a placement of benches on the common. Mr. Boudreau, do we have someone here from Tricentennial Committee? No?
Mr. Smith was here. I don't know if he had to leave.
Yeah, he was the first one here.
Yeah, he was here. I don't know if he had to leave. It seems he might have had to leave, or maybe, you want to check?
May have been too hot, I
Check in the
think.
hallway, or-
Well, yeah, why don't you go check? I'll move on to the next item. Well, the next one's gonna be a long one, or a little longer one, so why don't we check real quick, see if he's out there.
While you're out there, though.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Kate.
Is that your backyard?
Pretty much what it looks like right now.
It's a little different, huh?
Sorry? A few more copies here, right? Bob can go make some more, I think. I didn't expect this big crowd.
1 year anniversary. It started like that.
I
Now it's
need
like-
one of them, I'm sorry.
Well, assuming that, at our, well, Bob's coming right now, we'll just double check. Has he left the building?
It seems so.
Okay, we'll move along.
Can you run some copies of that, Bob?
Okay.
Because it's not, well, it's on your desk, I left a package, but.
So next on the agenda, we have Arthur Bork from the chairman of the Fields Committee, here to give us a field project update. Arthur, welcome.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. As you can see from the package, this picture was taken on May 16th of 2014. That was a year ago Saturday. And for those that have been up on the project and know what it looks like, you can flip to the second page, which is an aerial stitched photo courtesy of Dick Schaffner, the local aerial photographer who's been sending us project updates as we go through the project. And that's where you see the building next to the high school is where that bulldozer was working in the first picture. We've made a lot of progress in the 12 months that we've been working on this project. The first pre-construction meeting was in May. First bulldozer on site was May 16th. Tomorrow, Tuesday, May 19th, we will pave the remaining site that needs to be paved. By the end of the week, we expect that we'll be hydroseeding the landscaping that needs to be done. All the punch list items have been worked on. We expect to be through the punch list by the end of this week. This project will be complete on Friday of this week, we expect. I do want to just add one little caveat. There is a possibility the hydroseeding won't get done on Friday. Depends on weather and a bunch of other factors. And they're scheduling the hydroseed schedule, but we fully expect that this project will be hydroseeded, if not on Monday, by Friday. It'll be done on Monday or Tuesday of the following week, but we expect it to be done.
Excuse me, is it irrigated?
Is it irrigated? No.
So we just rely on the rain?
We're looking at the possibility of doing some irrigation up there. That's one of the many possibilities, but there's a number of little items like that. Linda's point is well taken here tonight. There are items like irrigation up there that were not included in the original plans that we probably need to look at as far as the grass grows or grass goes. And that's one of those issues, and we're going to have to make a decision what we're going to do, and I'll get to that when we get down into the financial portion of this. The The shrubbery and the grass, though, by the way, is guaranteed for a year. The landscaper has to make that grass grow, and they have to make the trees grow, and we're carefully watching. They planted all their shrubs in October of last year to beat the frost deadline on November 14th. Most of those trees, I've done a walk of the site. I've done a couple walks of the site, actually, and most of the trees they're growing. I wouldn't say they're in beautiful shape, but they're small and they're growing. So it's they could use a little encouragement and probably use a little pruning here and there, but we haven't found any that are dead yet. So that's what we're working on. We have till October of next year, or October of this year, to identify that, but we're working on that.
Now, is that inclusive of the arborvitaes? Did you end up planting arborvitaes at the school?
We've planted arborvitaes up in the back of the softball field, and it includes all of, I'm sorry?
The girls' softball field, right?
The girls' softball
Yeah.
field, and it includes all those, it includes every planting on the site, including the hydroseeding.
And there hasn't been any issue with the deer?
You know, we haven't, the arborvitae's in good shape. Please, don't.
Only because I know that mine are
Don't tell the deer that they're there.
high and their
No,
neighbors.
that's happened to mine, absolutely, yeah.
Our construction management consultant, Gail, has been on the site. They were on the site last week. We did a walk through with them. There were no significant items noticed during their inspection. We did a big punch list back in the fall of last year. All of those punch list items have been resolved. There are still a very small number of things up there that we're working on. There are gates on the fields. They're very sophisticated. Instead of the old swinging gates, they have some very nice gates up there, but there are some tracking issues with those gates, and we're working on those gates to get them lined up and get them aligned again. And the gate company is, we've consulted them. There are some issues with when the gate slides all the way out because of its weight. It has a tendency to dip a little bit. It then puts pressure on the wheels on the other side. Then it doesn't go back in exactly right. And they're building, the fence companies are looking at a solution to slide that gate into a holder that will hold it in place so it doesn't pitch. So we're looking at a bunch of those issues. Again, that stuff all has a 1-year guarantee on it. We're working hard to make sure that it's in compliance. There are a couple sections of fence up there that have come loose. The epoxy in the holes has come loose. In one case, the concrete is slightly cracked. The contractors are aware of that. They're going to be in. They're going to re-epoxy the holes. They'll close up that concrete for us before we're done. So we're working on all of those issues that are punch listed. And quite honestly, if anyone sees an issue up there that they think needs to be resolved, please bring it to our attention. Either the AD, myself, any one of the DPW employees are up there. We have a list of things that are being worked on almost on a daily basis, and I'm on the site every single day working through some of these issues. Our contract requirement from the contractor was to deliver the playing surfaces by November 29th of last year. The contractor was in full compliance with those contract terms. However, the landscaping, there was no contract compliance or landscaping portion of the contract that said they had to have the landscaping done. And what we all expected them to get it done in the fall. We had such a tough fall. If you remember, it snowed early and we had a lot of rain. It washed out all the landscaping that they had done. And we finally reached a point where it got into the second week of November, and the contractor came to me and said, look, we're making a mistake going in there and hydroseeding this now. It's not going to take. Leave it. We'll be back in the spring first thing, and we'll get in there and fix it. They were back in the spring. If you remember the first couple weeks of March and the second couple weeks of March, there was 2 or 3 feet of snow still sitting on the ground up there. I came back on April 15th to go up there, and there was still snow on the ground. So they were on the site. By the middle of April, we were on the site working. They, the turf company came back on the site again to regroom the softball and baseball fields, but all of those fields were turned over, and we had some of the first games in the Cape Ann League on the baseball and softball fields here. In fact, a number of the away games were supposed to be played other places, ended up getting played in Linfield because we had one of the only fields in Cape Ann that could be played on. There were a number of construction challenges during this project, and so I'm going to summarize them because there's been a lot of stories out there and a lot of different rumors floated, and it's hard to believe, I know, but there's a group in Linfield that has a lot of malicious intent and has taken a great deal of pleasure in trashing this project and trashing me personally. And so I resent that to a great degree, I might add. But I'm going to go over a number of different issues that have been mentioned in different stories and rumors, and I want to address them tonight. The decision to turf the baseball and softball fields that was made by town meeting when they voted the extra money resulted in the baseball dugouts, not the existing baseball dugouts, which were supposed to remain, not being in an appropriate height for the turf fields. We made a decision to replace the existing dugouts with new dugouts. We had a change order in the amount of $84,000 to do that. The school drainage system collapsed, as everyone knows. We went to town meeting asking for an extra $100,000 to do that. We've spent just under $100,000 in the charges to repair the drainage system up there. We made a decision to upgrade the Musco lighting from 50 kilowatt to 100 kilowatt because we heard from the contractor and others involved, and we went out and talked to a number of different communities who had done the 50 kilowatts and went back and changed it afterwards, and they said it was a big mistake, that they should have gone with the 100 kilowatts. And so we made a decision to do that, and that cost us $100,000 in a change order. The cost of dealing with the contaminated nickel soils was $93,000 from Green Environmental. It was an expense that was never anticipated. Even though we had a little nickel, I don't think any of us expected to have the amount of nickel on that site that we did. All of the nickel soil was distributed on the property. It never left the property. There was one truckload of what is called urban fill, which was the result of a contaminated grid, a 256 square foot grid that was right about where the amenities building is now, or just in front of where it is. And that grid appeared to be an old still and some other stuff, the frame of a car. We disposed of the hardware that was in there, the car frame and the other hard items, glass and bottles that were in there, disposed of them in the dumpster. They weren't considered contaminated waste. And the soil was disposed of as urban fill. We paid Green Environmental to dispose of that. We have certificates to that effect. Contrary to some of the stories that have been around, no nickel soil left the site. The soil that did leave the site was done under change order, and we have the certificates from Green Environmental, who monitored the activity. On some days had 2 or 3 people up there monitoring what was going on, and as I say, we paid a dear price for it because it cost us over $93,000 to do that. We had a number of other little issues that needed to be addressed for whatever reason. We put a scoreboard in the softball field. No provisions on the drawings were made to bring power to the scoreboard. The water at the baseball field was never considered, but you need water to groom the pitcher's mound, so the choice was to buy a tank for the back of the gator or whatever we would have up there and tow it around, or just put water in. We made a decision to put the water in there. And I want to say Ken Burnham from Linfield Center Water District, the Board of Water Commissioners in Linfield Center were very, very helpful to us. They provided a lot of the hardware and equipment. They made all the hookups for us. We had to run some pipe, which our contractor did on a change order, but the rest of the stuff was provided by Linfield Center Water District, including some backflow prevention equipment and other stuff that we needed up there. And I couldn't thank Kenny enough for the work that they did to help us out up there. There were some fence heights that needed to be changed from 4 feet to 6 feet, primarily because they abutted the pedestrian walking paths, and we wanted to try to get a 6-foot fence in the area, particularly of left field on the baseball field, where those kids can hit the ball. We have safety netting above it, but the feeling was that if we could put 6-foot fence, the head height of the people walking, they're actually another foot below it, so the head height of people walking on those pedestrian pathways would be about a foot below the 6-foot fence. It was highly unlikely. It would take a real coincidence for a ball to drop in on them, given the height of the safety netting. So we made a decision to change that fence height, and that was a change order. As we've reported previously in my first update a year ago, we had more loam up on that site than we could accommodate. We negotiated with the contractor to sell that loam. Contrary to all of the rumors and people that chose to spread them, and people from Linfield who followed the trucks and did their active surveillance, contrary to those rumors, we negotiated a change order with the contractor. The town received $119,685 in credits for that loam, which we sold to the contractor. And that includes credit for not having to truck it within 5 miles of the site, and credit for the loam that he sold in whatever his own deal was. He had a deal that he made, but we negotiated the change order, and all we wanted to do was get it off the site, because we had, as long as that loan was on, we couldn't do much with it. So in total, we had $141,000, $141,235.76 in credit change orders that were negotiated with the contractor. There are a couple of them that are going to, they're all very easily explained. I won't go into them, but anyway. From a financial summary standpoint, This was a $7 million accelerated timetable project with a lot of moving parts. I don't think any of us in this room or any of us on the committee ever anticipated all of the anomalies and idiosyncrasies that we would encounter. Unanticipated expenses such as the dugouts, nickel-laden soils put a tremendous burden on the financial aspects of this project from day one. However, with careful management, I'm proud to report that this project will be completed at the end of this week, and we have sufficient funds in the project to complete all of the work that remains, and will leave us with a balance in the account that I have some recommendations on how we spend it, and we'll have to see. If you want to turn to the page, the summary of the project. In the field construction portion of it, you'll see in the town meeting budget column, the total appropriation. And I will say that I made a pretty significant attempt to try to break this out so that we could look at change orders and different stuff. And it becomes, I spent 2 days working on a spreadsheet that would try to explain how change orders occurred and how they impacted different parts of this budget. And behind this top summary sheet, there's a lot of breakouts of change orders, what each change order contained, what the value of all that stuff was, what portion of those change orders were attributable to the drainage change orders, what portion of those change orders were attributed to straight field work and all of that. But the easiest way to summarize this is to tell you that in total, town meeting approved in 2 different town meetings, a total of 5.767 for this portion of the project. For the field's installation, not the whole project. And if you look, you can see what the white requisitions, all the reds of stuff that we've already paid or that we currently owe. So in one column, it's the expenditures that we've already made. In the second column, it's payments that are pending. For instance, we know that we're going to owe White $38,718 to finish this project. We know that the retainage that we still owe to White is $109,919. And then we know that we've had supplemental field equipment purchases, some that we've already made for $36,000, and some that we've made but haven't been paid for yet because we haven't received the bill in the amount of $59.48. But at the end of the day, when all of that construction was totaled, we had about $85,000 left in surplus funds in the field construction portion of this project. That comes from negotiated change orders. It comes from all of the different things we did to try to control the cost on the project. If you go to the next section in engineering and testing, we appropriated at town meeting $49,000 for the engineering and testing. Our expenditures for engineering and testing, including the green environmental bills, are $121,518. And again, they're all broken out on the subsequent sheets that you have in front of you. The running total you see on the right-hand side, it ends up in that column, we ended up with a net loss in that category of about $72,000. Under project management, we appropriated $123,160. For those people that, and I know there's a Freedom of Information Act request been made for all of the records pertaining to the contract, and you know, if people want to look at it and find out, you know, what they can point fingers at, and that's fine. On the munis reports, the appropriation is 170-something thousand in there. There's 59,000 in the munis report that was originally designated at town meeting for the townwide field improvements project. I haven't included that money here. That's a set aside. It's still in the budget. It has not been touched. But of the 123,160 that was appropriated, we had a couple of change orders for engineering related to the drainage part of the project for about $3,500. So that ended up costing us, in the end, we spent about I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong column. For the project management, we spent about $3,500 in change orders for the drainage portion of the project. And again, those are outlined on the subsequent pages. But our total for the project management portion of this and the re-engineering of the drainage that we needed to have done, we're over budget on that category by about $3,296.54. So those 2 categories reflect over expenditures.
How much, Arthur, was the re-engineering because of the drainage? How much was that? How much was the
$3,500.
$3,500.
Yeah, that's what it cost us. So if we had not had that, we would have returned money, and the return money comes from a change order that we negotiated. There were a couple of different change orders, Chris, on the project. There were engineering that needed to be done pursuant to a couple different things.
Those are all
one of which was the
unforeseen.
one of which was the dugouts and all of that.
Yeah.
The other thing was some re-engineering that had to be done as a result of the drainage issues. On the other side of that, we negotiated with the Gale and said, look, we had a problem in the waste pump station from the amenities building and the lift. There's a pump that has to lift the sewage from the tank because the DEP made us change all the tanks up there. So it was a really tough project actually to re-engineer. But the pumps that were originally scheduled did not have the lift capacity to lift the sewage up into the septic system that is already at the school. And no, we're not responsible for the stink that's in the parking lot. That was there long before we got there. But that lift station, we had to change the pump. And I went back on the engineering firm and said, you guys missed this. You should have had this. And they gave us a $3,200 credit against our some of our project overruns. So our net project exceeding the cost is this $3,296 is what's there. So on the amenities building, again, the total appropriation by town meeting was $1,068,000. We awarded the contract. You'll see the payments that we've already made to date. That building has been approved. The building inspector, the architect, the engineers, and I have all walked the building. There was a punch list on the day we did the walkthrough, and they had two guys walking behind us fixing the items that were on the punch list, and they were very minor. Some nail holes that were missing caulking, where the caulking had come out. I mean, really, when I say minor stuff, Jackie Roberto, the building inspector, said this building was extremely well built. This contractor did a great job for the town of Lynnfield. They were a little bit behind schedule getting off the mark. They weren't my favorite vendor. I spent a lot of time with them trying to coach them forward and get them to get back on schedule. It was very painstaking for me when we tried to open those fields on October 10th, and to the last day we were working on bathrooms. But we have currently outstanding with them in the amenities building $37.91 in retainage that we're holding. The partition doors in the bathrooms came through scratched, or they were scratched when they were put up. So we had the partition door vendor come back in, and he's agreed to replace all the doors in the bathrooms. So we are holding $37.91 until he does that, by agreement with Stallion. I mean, we told them what we were going to do, and they were okay with that. So we have a balance in that account of about $28,000. Our net on this project is that we have about $37,761 at this point left available to spend. My recommendations would be that we go into the two bathrooms in the amenities building and put heaters in there. For those of us that were in there in October, November of last year, the two bathrooms were pretty chilly. And I was just glad I wasn't a woman, quite honestly, because those seats had to be cold. It wasn't fun. Ms. Newell has already mentioned the possibility of putting irrigation up. I think that's one of the things we need to consider, is putting some kind of an irrigation system in. We do have a deep well on the property. That deep well was saved during the construction project. We can get power to that deep well. It's going to require about a 50-foot conduit be put in that will get us back to there's a power station right behind the baseball field. We believe there's enough power there to do that. We may have to replace the pump in the deep well, because the pump, we believe, is currently, and I'm waiting, I called Wilmington Pump a week ago and haven't heard back from them, but we believe the pump is 220, and we're not sure that we can supply 220 over to that well. We may have to bring it back to a 110 voltage pump. But truthfully, those pumps are not that expensive. The well is the expensive portion of it, and that's in, and we believe that's in good shape. It was working up until the construction project was initiated. So those are just a couple of areas where I think we might want to consider spending money. The sheets behind that, as I say, don't break down. I think for those that have looked at the Munis charts and tried to read them, it's like reading Greek. Hopefully these Excel spreadsheets will give you better breakout of everything involved in this project. I've tried to include everything that I thought was important. If there's a question that somebody has, I'd take a question tonight, but if there's a question that somebody has about the expenditures or where the money went, I'd be happy to answer those questions.
As far as the irrigation goes, is that going to be pedaling backwards over the construction that's been done on the field?
Well, we wouldn't have to do much. conduit would have to run against a small piece where there's grass, but everything else, we'd have to go in and put the irrigation system in where the grass is, where the hydro seed is. We should have to make that back up. I don't think it's a big thing. It's, again, it wasn't a decision that I wanted to make until I knew exactly how much money we have left, and we have to go back, look at it. It's just, you know, I tried to get to this meeting without spending every single penny that we had, but we managed to get through most of it, so.
Arthur, if we did look at doing heaters in the bathrooms, do you have an idea what?
They're about $5,000 per unit,
Mhm.
we think. I've asked the DPW guy to get me a price. They have an HVAC guy on contract in town. I've asked him to get me a couple prices. I will mention that there's been a number of change orders, or 2 change orders in that building, and then a third purchase that we made. And quite honestly, we found that bringing our town vendors in and asking them to give us a price on something was cheaper than asking the contractors for a change order. For instance, the fire department was not happy with the alarm system as specified by the engineer and as certified and approved. In the end, they asked us to add some strobes to the system. We had a $4,000 price from the contractor. We had it done for $1,200. So there were those types of things that we went outside the normal realm. Outfield fencing for the baseball and softball field, we had a price as high as $59,000 for that. We had some other prices that were in the 20s. We went to On Deck Sports, bought the fence for $9,000 and some change. The athletic director, Mike Beerworth, and I put the fence up last week on both softball and baseball and installed it. We have a windscreen coming. The price for the windscreen that we had from the contractor was several $1,000s. I think the windscreen that we bought has cost us under $2,000. We have fence cap that's coming. The fence cap from the contractor was $5,000. The fence cap that we bought through a PO that we will buy, we're kind of actually waiting because we're looking at something, but it's going to cost us $1,000 or $1,200, something in that range. So we've done a lot of those types of things where we bought outside the original contract rather than change order the contract. You know, we sourced a lot of the stuff to find out where we could get it cheaper, and in many cases bought it. In a few of the cases, we had tremendous cooperation from the contractor, White Construction. They've been tremendous. We have an extremely good relationship with them. And there were a number of things that were done for us that were above and beyond the contract that were not done on change orders. There were certain things that had to be done on change order because the amount of work or the materials involved it cost them money. But when there was stuff like putting up the signs that we have for the fields that have the rules and the maps and all that, there was no change order. They put those signs up for free. It wasn't included in their contract. When it came to, can you give me an extra conduit from here to here? They threw the conduit in because there just wasn't a cost involved in it. So there were a lot of those little things that we got from them because of the relationship we had with them. And then in other cases, we just bought stuff and did it, you know. And the cubbies for the baseball helmets and bats and the dugouts were $4,400. I think the price from Sportsfield Specialties was $4,000 a piece. So there's that type of thing that we did that made substantial difference in how we saved the money up there. So
Yeah, the fence cap that you're purchasing, is that for all the fence, or just the fence with its?
It's going to be all the 4 foot
screening.
We're buying 1,000 feet of it. We have 530 feet of chain link fence that we installed. The silver chain link fence that you'll see up there. That silver chain link fence is going to be covered with a navy blue windscreen that'll have Pioneer softball with the Pioneer logo on it out to the right of center field. You can't put it directly in center field because it distracts the pitchers distracts the hitters when they're hitting against the pitchers. So we've moved it off to right of center, but it'll have Pioneer softball on it, and it'll have a yellow cap on it. The rest of the fence that's along, for instance, the first baseline of baseball, or in the outfield, the right field of the softball field, and the first baseline of the softball field, that'll have fence cap. Anywhere where there's exposure to players in a 4-foot fence, we're going to try to get cap on it because it protects the ribs of the players if they go over the fence trying to catch a ball. Mm-hmm. And that's the objective.
So that's different than the cap that we discussed last year where the netting catches on the fence? You said if we had a cap
that's
there.
That's a different cap.
That's a different
we have
cap.
not ordered that yet. That may be another expense, a relatively minor expense, quite honestly, and probably will save us a lot of money in fence over the time, but just haven't gotten there yet.
Right. Excuse me, Linda, would you step up to the mic? Because I know there's people, it is being recorded, so people
They can't hear you.
Linda Newton, you kind of skirted by the smell in the parking lot that, you know, you were not to blame for. Is there a way to alleviate that smell?
There is.
And,
We have a
and,
$50,000 contract with a vendor who's supposed to make sure there is no smell up there. And when you get the smell, you call the contractor and he comes down and does whatever he has to do to get rid of it, but it still is there for a couple hours, 2 or 3 days. So
it's
a
all
problem.
generated from that
Generated from the
machine?
septic waste system that's underneath the parking lot.
Okay.
It's difficult because they don't know that they've got a problem really until the smell comes. I mean, they do regular inspections. I mean, I can tell you, having been on that site for the last year every day, the vendor, Martinage, is on that site a lot. They got a guy in a pickup truck, he shows up and he's there for several hours doing whatever he has to do. And, you know, sometimes he doesn't show up until the smell is there. Sometimes he beats it there. I don't know what his system is. And I suppose it probably has something to do with flow and students and activity and, you know, all of that.
Arthur, I think
Septic waste is not my specialty.
I think the one thing we're not seeing here on this balance sheet, and I think Linfield has to hear, is the savings to the community because of what you've done to manage this project by volunteering your time. I don't think I've been down the field, you haven't been down there. And I think of recently today, I saw some pictures online of you planting geraniums around the project, and I think it's your dedication and the volunteer of the Fields Committee that it's just unfortunate there isn't a item here on the balance sheet to say this is the savings to this town, because, you know, that is real savings. Because of your volunteer work, we're able to look at to see, let's put heaters in the bathroom or spend elsewhere around the Fields complex. So I just, on behalf of Linfield, I really hope everybody hears the dedication, your volunteer work of making sure this was a success, so thank you.
Thanks. Well, it's been a labor of love for me, you know. It's, I'm very involved in those fields down there, and I think what we've done as a town is spectacular. I think this complex, I mean, you stand down there and, I mean, there's nothing that gives me greater pleasure than, quite honestly, at 5 o'clock at night when the varsity teams roll off those fields and you see these kids run out there with a football and start playing, just pick up football or pick up soccer or pick up lacrosse. And then we see kids on those fields, you know, during the day when Linfield schools are in session, we'll see kids that are in private school that are out there because they have no school at whatever school they're at, or those types of things. And so you see the activity and use. And, you know, we were there, actually Mr. Crawford and I were there 2 weeks ago on a Saturday putting a couple of soccer goals up that the town bought to handle the U8 or U12 teams, and with Joe Maney and a couple of others. And there was a father and 2 sons playing pickup lacrosse, and we started talking to him, and he just said, "This is unbelievable. I mean, this is just unbelievable what this town has done," and it really is. And the town deserves a tremendous amount of credit for making this happen. And so, while I appreciate your very kind comments, I think it's reflective of the nature of the town and the willingness and a change that I think is taking place in town, where people want services, want benefits, and want these things, and are willing to spend a few extra dollars to get them. And I think this field reflects that.
Absolutely agree.
I'd also like to thank you, Arthur, for all your hard work. This is the second go-around for this field project, and thank you for pushing it through. And we certainly, and you're right, we need to thank the townspeople for coming out and voting for this project.
Right.
They wanted it, they got it.
Yep.
They got a great field down there, should last many years, a lot of extensive use. So thank you
Want it
Fields
every day.
Committee, and thank the people of Linfield.
Any, go ahead, Linda?
Speaking of a labor of love, at the town meeting last fall, I spoke regarding the tennis courts at Newhall Park. And I feel like I was placated by you saying that maybe we'd keep one. And now your plans have changed to demolishing both courts. It's the Fields plans. For the Selectmen, I'd like to know why the park has been neglected for so many years. The tennis courts were not resurfaced for 2 times that all of the other courts in town were resurfaced. It's not just a Little League field. It's a recreational park for all townspeople. The option to play at the middle school is great if you're an avid tennis player. Otherwise, your ball goes across 4 courts, interrupting 3 other games. The other only option that there is in town is Glen Meadow, which is abutting a neighbor's fence. I've gone down with clippers. I've gone down with leaf blowers to try to clean that court, to play on that court. The ones at Newhall Park, there hasn't been a net in I don't know how long because the poles were so antiquated that the DPW couldn't purchase anything to fit the poles. 5 years ago, I took pictures of all of the town parks. I always keep a rake in my car. I go down to Jordan Park, I rake underneath the playgrounds. I go down to Newhall Park, I try to cut the weeds back in the kids' playground area. The fencing down there, I believe, is now also on the agenda to be replaced again. However, the loss of those two courts for parking, to me, would be so easy to ask the owner of the Valley High, as he did when the middle school was being reconstructed and the kids had no courts to practice for the tennis team and the summer rec program. He was very amiable to allowing all of the students into his facilities to use their bathrooms, to get waters, and things like that. To my knowledge, he still hasn't been approached to ask if he would mind being, the town allowing to use the parking lot for the Little League. When you go down the right-hand side of the road of Oak Street, there seems to be enough to the fence if it was cleared and the sidewalk was removed on the right-hand side, but keeping the sidewalk on the left-hand side, entering into the park, that we could have diagonal parking going down that way. I think it's not just because it is named after my uncle. My great-grandfather was on the Board of Selectmen in 1902 that designated that to be a residential park for all of the residents of town. Through the years, because of the leasing of the water to Peabody and things like that, the usage has been cut down a lot. But the difference between playing on Main Street as opposed to playing on the water with the nice breeze in the summertime, you're not interfering with the kids' school activities, you're not interfering with Craig Stone and his summer program, I think would really open up the opportunity for families that go down there that aren't involved with baseball and, have little kids at the playground, for others to be participating in the tennis courts. So I would really, I've gone to the Fields Committee meeting, and the motion was not seconded after Mr. Priestley made the first motion. I don't know why it's been so neglected, but in 1999, it was promised that the fencing around the courts, that the town did have the money appropriated to replace the fencing around the courts, which is original from 1957. So my question to the Board of Selectmen is there a way to, through the Rec Commission, through the Fields Committee, through whoever, as these other courts in town are being resurfaced, to scratch the 25 parking spots and maintain the two courts that are in that park?
Well, Linda, as you know, this board was not together when any of, and this is
Right, I
Tom and I have been here
understand
2
that.
years. Chris is brand new. So
I believe
again,
Mr. Burke was
again,
actually on the board at the
any
time
prior,
that the money
anything
was
prior
accepted.
was, but if the reason the park is in the condition it's in is the reason the whole town's in the condition it was a year ago. Everything needed to be redone in
Oh,
town.
I understand that, but in the
so
meantime, the other parks, the other courts were resurfaced.
they may have been. I don't know.
You
I don't
know?
know why Newhall wasn't getting any attention. I have no idea. We have a new town administrator. He would know. I think we have a new DPW director. So we're trying to correct a lot of these things throughout town, as you know. And the Fields projects was one of the biggest.
Because I know
proponents,
through
pieces of
Townscape,
that.
they had offered to actually take a piece of the stone wall to the backside of the ball field and actually cut a stone stairway from the parking lot of the Valley High down to the field for more access.
To Valley High?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, Valley High, that's not town property.
I understand
This is a town park. I don't, no one's ever brought up the suggestion or even to talk to a private business owner for a town park because he owns his own private business at the town. We're trying to manage the town land that we have.
Right.
You know, okay, so it's in such dilapidated shape now, I don't know if anything could be done with those courts. You know?
They could be
Yeah.
aggregated, and they could be resurfaced.
Well, I don't know that. I don't know if the fences are savable. I don't know if the courts
No,
are.
the fences
yeah.
are from 1957.
Yeah,
They're
so,
covered in,
and
you know-
I'm not that familiar with that whole area. But the condition is, because the whole town was in that condition. You look at Jordan Park, that parking lot and that whole playground there is all dilapidated now. We were looking at the schools, the school parks, Glen Meadow, that whole park area has to be redone.
Oh, I
You know?
understand that. I actually
Yeah.
was on the group that did the building of Glen Meadow when they
Sure.
originally did the park.
Right. Now the playground, the kids' playground's going to have to be all redone.
Right.
Yeah, that's been
Well, everything
become
has
unsafe.
a certain, longevity of
Lifespan.
life.
Yeah, they have lifespan.
But, to say that nobody uses the courts, it's because of the dilapidated condition of them, which I had brought to the Board of Selectmen over 5 years ago. I took pictures of all of the parks. The Little League fences, the gates are locked, and people are told that it's private property of the Little League, and they're not allowed to play on them. Excuse me. It just seems like Newhall Park has turned. I know the sign says home of Linfield Little League, but it's not the only thing that should be relevant in that park.
Yeah, and I think that came up before. I think you brought that up before, and that's been corrected. I think Little League was told that they can't monopolize that whole field, even though they consider it the
Right, they
private
take-
property of Little League. It is not.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other issue I have with the Little League down there is that they have signage up against the fencing, promoting private companies. And I don't think that coincides with the bylaws of town for a recreational park to have private vendors place signage.
So they have advertising on the fences that
chained
obviously
all
it's
along the
fundraising.
fence.
It's a fundraising
To maintain the fields.
to maintain the fields.
Right.
Right.
But I mean, a thank you in the newspaper, on their flyers, things like that, I think would be much more appropriate than obstructing the view of the entire park by their signage. But as far as the tennis courts themselves go, the Recreation Commission committee had told me that there was money in the coffers 5 or 6 years ago. And that's it, is as things are being brought up to, snuff again, I don't see why Newhall Park keeps getting skipped over to the point that there is, moss and mold on the back of the tennis courts. There is no real surface left on it. The DPW 3 years ago went down with the liquid tar and filled in the cracks. However, that made it even more impossible to play the game. I think to let it go and make just more parking for one sect of town is doing a disservice to the rest of the town.
Linda, back when I was chairman of the Recreation Committee, I think Chris was on the committee as well at the time. You sent in a letter to us regarding this very issue. And at that time, we did get it on Dennis Roy's radar, the DPW director at the time, to try to do something. And also, that was the beginning. That was one of the turning points when we opened that, we asked the Board of Selectmen at the time to create the revolving account that now funds the fields director and other programs. So at that time, we didn't have the financial ability to redo those fields, but to redo those 2 tennis courts. But we did realize at the time that there is an enormous need for additional tennis courts in town. I think if you recall, Chris, we tried to start a tennis program, and there weren't enough tennis courts in town. And a lot of it for the reasons that you just stated. The courts are taken, and people just can't get on them. So we certainly do need to expand that. I think we also looked at the tennis court, either it's on Wildwood or Edgemere, And
Oh,
that
that's
was
long
probably
gone.
an even worse condition.
No, that's gone.
And-
But that was a
Long gone.
that was a private
There's a
tennis
private one.
court
Okay.
for those in Wildwood Acres.
There's some association tennis courts that only
Yeah.
for the association.
But
Yeah.
one of
There's
the
a couple
things,
in town.
I think Tom is right, we talked, we want to have a diversity of recreational opportunities for everybody. Certainly, I think the tennis was one of those opportunities of maintaining and keeping the tennis
I mean, our
court.
tennis teams are always on the top,
The best of the best.
you know?
I don't disagree
And
with
and
that.
it doesn't start with them playing in high school. It starts with them playing as children.
Yeah, no, but I think, and as Phil is, and we're at a point where the town's starting to really turn the direction. And we can, I mean, we put more money into road maintenance. We're trying to reinvest into as much of this as we can so that the fields don't get like this again.
Right.
So, but we understand the concern. I think I talked to you
I mean, whether
a
it's
month ago about
through, you
this.
know, if there's not enough within the field's budget, where they're resurfacing the junior high, middle school, high school, and Glen Meadow, to raise the funds privately wouldn't be an issue for me.
Well, we
Yeah.
aren't resurfacing Glen Meadow. We're renovating the field itself.
I
Yeah,
read that it was being resurfaced.
Is the parking lot being resurfaced? Is that
No,
part
not
of-
the parking lot, the tennis courts.
Is the tennis court being resurfaced at Glen Meadow? Was that part of the
Glen
project?
Meadow?
Yeah.
It's getting some treatment, it's not getting resurfaced.
Everything was
It's
being
getting some,
resurfaced, yeah.
Patching, whatever it needs to get.
So
it's
what-
not in bad shape.
What was the final recommendation of the Fields Committee for New
I
Hall
think the
Park?
Fields Committee, Mr. Chairman, felt that first of all, we published the fact that we were gonna discuss the New Hall tennis courts. We asked the press and got great cooperation from both papers that we were gonna discuss the New Hall tennis courts, and the people that wanted to speak to that cause should come to our meeting. And Mrs. Newton showed up and spoke her piece, and I think the Fields Committee was very sympathetic to what she had to offer, but and I don't mean to speak for all the members of the committee, but I think the majority of the committee felt that the recreational need at that location was to provide additional parking because of the congestion and the problems that we had when there were high-activity games going on there, which went almost every night. There's some form of game. There are 2 fields down there. There simply isn't enough parking in that parking lot. By eliminating the tennis courts, we could add 27 spaces to the parking lot. And while the suggestion to go to the Valley High and ask them if we can use their parking lot is a good suggestion, if this manager lets us, who knows what happens next week or next month. If I was the business owner, I would say no, simply because of the liability involved in it. But even if he says yes, we then have the liability of people jumping over the wall, so we'd have to build some kind of stairway going onto his property. There's a number of different issues that I think our board or our committee just wasn't willing to deal with to try to facilitate that and facilitate the tennis courts. I think the feeling was on the committee that these courts have atrophied because they don't get used. And I think Mrs. Newton would argue that they don't get used because they've atrophied. So, it's a circular problem, and I'm not sure, which came first, the chicken or the egg here. So that's the problem. But I think in the feeling of the field committee, our task was to try to resolve a number of different issues. Parking at that was one of the premier issues that baseball brought to our attention. I think we were trying to resolve that. I don't think the committee would be upset if the Board of Selectmen said, we want to keep tennis courts there. I will tell you that we go on June 2nd before the Conservation Commission to discuss the permitting to convert that to a parking lot. And because it requires certain drainage that the tennis court does not require, there's no additional expense. We don't expect there's expense of basically saying we're putting a hard top surface in that we're going to have to put down. But I mean, again, I think we just felt that it was a better use of that location, of that particular facility, the tennis courts, to make it into a parking lot.
Was there any other options discussed? I remember at the beginning of those discussions, I think it might have been an early meeting that you were at that I went to, and we talked about the possibility of 1 tennis court. So you picked up 10 or 15, 12 to 15 parking spaces, but you got to keep at least 1 tennis court there
Well,
for
there was
use.
also, on the opening day of the new fields, after my family's gifting, and the Pyburns gifting all of the excavation work, that people were lined their cars down Moulton Drive. So to have one side of Moulton Drive possibly be open for parking might also alleviate the issue, because there's no parking on either side of that road.
On Moulton.
On Moulton.
Okay.
But, you know, the day that we had the former Red Sox player there was a huge parade, and almost everyone in town was down there. All of Moulton was lined. Loxley, down the, I don't recall the name of the street. That's the next one, down from Oak Street.
Lake.
What is it?
Lakeview.
It's, but when things are going on in town, like the town day that we just had last weekend, people expect an overflux of vehicles. It just seems to me that if it was already parking lot and I came to you and asked you to put in tennis courts, that would be something.
Mm-hmm.
But they're existing. And to just get an aggregating machine in there and grind up what's there and resurface, I think would alleviate the entire issue.
Linda, you had mentioned the opportunity for private funds and fundraising to maintain or to renovate those courts.
I can, I mean, my family gave $65,000,
Yeah.
$50 for the baseball
Understand
field, and it was supposed to be field, park improvements. And then another $15,000 went for the lighting down there. As it stands now, even the Memorial Park sign dedicated to my uncle is missing. The sidewalks down there are a disaster. There's old pine trees that have cracked up through the sidewalks. So, it still does need some work that, Concom would have to look at. But I believe to take the courts away is really, we have it there. It just needs to be upgraded. So, if I go to, one of the issues with publicly putting them in the town papers is they no longer go to everyone in town. You have to go in and you have to purchase it for 75 cents. So there are things that happen in town that people are not aware of until after the fact. I don't even believe that the abutters have been notified of the changes that are going to be taking place down there. I know I spoke to Drew Taylor and he had no idea.
Sure. Arthur, was there any, do you know what's in the budget currently for the renovations at Newhall? Did it anticipate any?
Off the top of my head, I do not.
Okay.
But it's 100 and something thousand.
I didn't know if it anticipated either renovating a tennis court or any,
Did not.
or was it strictly
Straight parking lot.
Yep. and
that's going to cost
and roadway?
$100,000.
No, there's dugouts going in there for both baseball fields. There's field drainage repairs being done under both infields. There's outfield fences being put on a single field. There's fence replacement going on. There's a lot of stuff going on in that
Now,
park.
see, that fence replacement, the tennis court fence is from 1957. So, I just, the answers I'm getting seem to be just like I'm chasing my tail.
Well, what was the board's feeling on a single tennis court remaining there?
The discussion was had, and there was a motion. Originally, I think we talked about, I actually thought the discussion was gonna go towards having a single court when we discussed it. I'd have to go back to the minutes. It's been a while since we discussed it, but I believe the discussion was going towards having one court. And then there was, at some subsequent meeting, there was just a decision made. We talked, at that point, somebody had talked at baseball, and, or baseball had come to us and said the parking was the really big need down there. And I think the board as a whole, or the board 4 out of 5, voted to eliminate the tennis courts and, go with the parking lot.
Would the current money that's in the budget be able to put in the new parking and a single court?
I think the difference is minimal when you
Yeah.
talk about the two projects. I mean, it's a macadam surface that's going in. You're gonna pave it and
Yeah.
paint it and stripe it with parking lines, or you're gonna paint it and stripe it with a tennis court and put a net on it. I mean, what are we talking, $5,000 for a tennis net maybe, for the posts and everything else? that have to go
Linda,
with it,
would you be amenable to that? Would you be amenable to, we keep a single court, add a little bit of parking?
If
so
it
it's a-
also had a tennis surface on it, I mean, it would have to have a
We have a tennis
surface.
surface,
It
yeah.
would have a tennis service, because that's something, that's a good compromise, I think. I think you are correct. Baseball is only a one-season sport.
Right.
You got the rest of the summer, you got
Tennis is
fall,
fall,
you
yeah.
know, and you have other uses for the park other than baseball. I know there's a small playground there.
Very
but
small.
And I don't know how much that gets used. I know and they're looking to expand that a little bit too
Mhm.
with the mums group, but as far as the rest of the year, I think a tennis court or a basketball court or something other than just baseball is a good second choice for down there.
Arthur, can I ask one question? Just, I know we have this June 2nd date. As a board, could we ask at least a delay in that date? I don't know what the date.
We
some
can
of-
delay anything. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all in, truthfully, Newhall Park is in use until
Yeah.
August with the Summer League. We aren't planning on doing anything there until the fall. So to delay that project is not gonna, to delay Newhall isn't gonna hurt us at all. And I'll talk about the townwide field improvements project. I should bring you up to date. It'll take me a couple minutes when we get done with Mrs. Newton. But the, the project timeline is scattered. I mean, it's gonna take us, what I thought we would do this summer is not gonna happen this summer. I can tell you that simply because of conflicts with Rec Station at Summer Street School, conflicts with, Summer League Baseball at the, Newhall Park, and conflicts at a number of different locations with different organizations. Trying to work this schedule is gonna take, a lot of manipulation and maneuvering of schedules to try to get it done.
So we have flexibility, because
We have
that June,
flexibility.
when I
And
heard
in
the
the
June
meantime, we
2nd
could
date.
speak with Chief Breen about making one side of Moulton available for parking.
Well, we can
That
look at
road's
what
not
other
wide
designs
enough
for
to get
parking.
on it. You're not gonna, I think, I just tell you from a safety standpoint, I don't think that they'll allow parking on one side of Moulton Drive. It's just too narrow. It's only wide enough for cars to drive in two directions. If we put cars along there and you have to go in and out to weave, there's just too much traffic on that.
Well, it's a fairly busy road
It's a busy road.
at times, yes.
Arthur, with all the other parks that we have, is there any other place where we can relocate the two tennis courts or keep one there and add one somewhere else,
Well,
since we have this demand?
I think, Mr. Turnover, that was the feeling of the committee, was that there was already a substantial number of courts at the middle school. There's a substantial number of courts at the high school. We have them at Glen Meadow. And I think we felt that that was a sufficient number of courts to address the need and interest in tennis. And I agree, tennis is a popular sport in this town. But nobody, when Newhall was built, people in the neighborhood walked to that park. I mean, I live down there, I walked to that park. And, you know, you could cross Route 128 because there was a traffic signal at the Valley High, and you went across and did it. You know, we punched the walk light, stopped everybody on 128, and that was the end of it, you know? But, and so it goes back to those days when people walked to the parks and did other things. Today, it's a little bit different, and I think, again, the discussion that I recall from the committee was talking about, you know, these kids today want to play tennis, they want to go to the best courts they can go to, and they're driving and they're meeting a bunch of friends, and they're probably going to the middle school, or they're going to the high school, or going to Craig Stone's camp, as she mentioned, doing something else. I think the frequency of use was limited, and that's why the court atrophied. Again, if the court was pristine and really nice, I'm sure you'd get some additional tennis players that would go down there that weren't going down there when the court deteriorated, but
Yeah, I mean, there's
the
not a public court near that area,
well, it's a South Linfield
you know?
gem, and there's
So
not a lot down
other than private courts in people's backyards, you don't have a court in that area to play, so
That's the key.
it is key, because there's plenty of people in that area that are driving several miles to get to the other courts, so I think it's
The area is beautiful. And,
it is a beautiful area.
I think to lose that outside aesthetic of, you know, truly being outside as opposed to in a little canal down at Glen Meadow, you know, because
Oh, I agree, and it's gonna be nicer once the rest of the field projects are done. And
Exactly.
that's gonna get a big facelift, and that could be part of it, so I think.
know, so
I would definitely be in favor of adding a single court, and adding some parking, and then looking at the rest of the parking.
I also don't believe that the stone wall that is at the drops
Yeah,
next to the Valley High, I don't believe that's the town line. I think the town line actually goes back at least 10 feet.
It's about 10 feet from the
the
wall.
stone wall's 10 feet on the town property, is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
if you go down there, actually, you see the wall, you'll see a chain link fence that runs down about 10 feet behind the wall.
Yeah,
And that's the property line, to the best of my knowledge. And it comes all the way down. The fence doesn't come all the way down, but the property line comes all the way down. We
Right.
own about a grass strip about 10 feet.
and who constructed that wall, do we know?
Oh, that was done a long time
Long
ago.
time ago.
And it was also done with the intention that there was going to be a road that ran parallel with Moulton and went across Route 1.
Oh, okay.
So that was a long
Had a different
time ago.
purpose.
So that stone wall, you know, is an antiquated stone wall. However, the land does jet back that additional 10 feet.
Sure, sure. Katie, you have a question?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to be comment. Just the feedback that I did get when I was campaigning was that people definitely want to support the fields, but people talked about specifically Newhall Park and how the aging population does want more places to go to play tennis. So, you know, if it's a one-court thing, it would be wonderful. The other thing, too, is I just know when my boys were little, my husband and I would try to play tennis on that while they had baseball practice, and it was not in good shape.
Ball doesn't even bounce.
You know, so I think the compromise, thank you, it would benefit everybody,
No,
but that
there's-
was.
There's no question. If you could
Thank
make
you.
that a usable space, get the parking straightened out, the park's beautiful. It's getting better every year.
And, you know,
Yeah.
like I did say, on the right-hand side, there's really no need to have, there's really no need to have a sidewalk on both sides, because the sidewalk on the right-hand side adjoining Valley High is so overgrown.
Mhm.
And where the chain link fence is on the Valley High property, I really do believe that there could be angle parking going down into the park.
Arthur, do we look to see if that was wide enough to do that? Was that a
I think
possibility?
the chain link fence is right on the property line. I think even if you eliminate the sidewalk, there won't be enough room. Maybe wrong, I'll go down and look at it.
It'd be a very tight
Be tight.
road, I mean, times.
It'd be
Because
tight,
it
but
becomes a
that's it
safety
too,
factor.
is, I mean, everybody's driving these big giant
I
SUVs
know.
down there,
Can't change
you know?
that.
No, I know that,
But
but,
if you have a safety issue
Don't need our
there,
Escalade in our Starbucks.
if you have a safety issue there, then it's gonna be difficult to do that. Because you're gonna have little kids running out from behind cars while other cars are trying to get down into the parking lot. That might be an issue, but we can take a look at that. But I think it's definitely a good alternative.
Especially for South Linfield. I think South Linfield can maintain as much recreation in this part, that part of Linfield,
I
definitely.
hate the division of the south and the north. You know, it's crazy
I don't
because,
think there's I think we want to maintain the recreational opportunities, and I think the
Right.
more we could put, I think
you know, I
certainly,
mean,
coming
instead
from South
of,
Linfield,
you know, if
I
you
wanna
wanna go
see it.
play tennis, you've gotta, you know, strap your tennis court on your bike and then ride 3 miles down
Yeah.
to the middle school is a little crazy too.
It'd be a tough ride for me.
Mrs. Campbell, would you like to weigh in on this situation?
This whole conversation brought back some wonderful memories because my family, my father used to take my brother and I there as elementary school children to practice tennis. And I really relate to what Linda said because elementary children and their families might like to use a tennis court where the ball is not going to go into another tennis court.
Sure.
And I don't know if that's available anywhere else, but I will tell you, it really brings back memories. And I would also like to ask, would it be at all possible when Newhall Field comes up, since this lady has a long family history with Newhall Park, could she get some kind of notice about what's happening
Oh, she will.
with it?
The abutters will.
Will she now?
All the abutters were. and-
I'm not in a butter, I
She-
live on Main Street.
She lives on Main Street, I guess, but I
Figure it out.
I think that would be kind as residents of Linfield to, you know, to give her that special consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Heather?
So I agree with what we're talking about here. I think it's great. I do live in South Linfield, and sometimes it's nice to walk or go a short distance to get somewhere and not have to drive across town. There's a lot of activity at the middle school, at the high school, with the fields. Just kind of a quiet place would be great just to go. On another note, you talked about a surplus or an extra amount of money in the budget. We have signature fields, but the landscaping in front of the high school looks terrible. And so with that being said, is there any money that could be allocated to put some bushes and some shrubs? Graduation's coming. Maybe, you know, make it look kind of nice. Just a few bushes and shrubs, something pretty.
I think Mr. Boudreau would be happy to throw some extra money in there for
Just
that.
a little bit, just a little bit. It's really ugly, and we have these signature fields, and they're beautiful, and I love the aerial view, and I think that's great. And my daughter's a pitcher, varsity, and she loves the fields, and thank you very much for your hard work. But it would look really pretty when our guests pull up to the high school to see something that looks nice.
Okay, thank you.
Linda, this seems to be a good compromise.
Yes.
Going down to one court
Absolutely.
where baseball
Absolutely.
gets a few additional parking spots.
Mhm.
You know, we get to keep one needed tennis court, that seems to be a really good compromise to me, so that would be something I would fully support.
As for bushes in the front, we're putting in more shrubbery in that hump in front of the school.
Arthur, could that,
Yeah,
Arthur, could that also be, also dual-purposed into a tennis/basketball facility?
Well, you'd have the net in it. You know, the tennis, you'd have the tennis net across the middle of it.
Yeah. Because a
I
lot of
mean,
times,
you-
a lot
at
of kids
best-
like to play basketball,
At
too.
best, I mean, you could put a hoop up that they could shoot on the hoop. I don't think you're gonna line it for a basketball court, but.
Yeah.
No.
Well, it would be the short way. It wouldn't be
Right.
obviously full court.
I think,
You know.
yeah.
That might be an alternative to look into, see if there's any possibility of doing that.
And then
because
people that wanna go play tennis have gotta compete with the kids for the basketball to
Well,
get
that's
on
the
the
whole
court.
thing.
See, that's what
But
happened
if
at
they're not
Glen
playing
Meadow.
tennis, then it's just sitting there again.
That's what
you know.
happened at Glen Meadow was there were 2 tennis courts and then one got morphed into a basketball court
Right.
where the kids go down and they're skateboarding in it. The language is absurd that comes out of their mouths while they're playing basketball. It's not a very child-oriented spot to be stuck up against the outside fence and having these kids that are more on their own
Sure.
playing ball because, you know, the folks aren't there.
Well-
And it's really kind of a hard place to
Well,
play.
well, that happens all over town. The kids play street hockey. They play
Right.
basketball, they play they play multiple different, skateboarders. You know, there's different kids that use the same courts for other purposes.
Mhm.
That's why I was kind of thinking if there's a multi-purpose use you can make out of it, because there's no room to put a big basketball court and a tennis court and have enough parking for everybody. It's not possible. Newhall, even though it's a beautiful park, it is limited on space.
Well, that's if,
You know,
you know, you drive through town and there is quite an abundance of basketball hoops in town.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, the town residents have gotten to a point where they actually call the police because kids are playing ball in the streets. You know, that's what it's come to.
Yeah.
But,
Are they supposed to, are they allowed to play in the streets with
oh,
basketball?
you know, it's a way of growing up. You play in your neighborhood.
Pretty common.
You play in the street, you shoot hoops with the kids, you know, that's where kids are supposed to congregate is within the neighborhoods. Which is, you know, if you look at any real estate listing, it's, you know, prime neighborhood, family oriented, you know, it lists all of these things regarding the neighborhoods. So basketball, I don't think is in a short supply in almost anybody's driveway.
Right, because you can play it in a smaller area and
Play it in a
anywhere.
small area.
Tennis is
Tennis
different.
courts, you know, I know what's involved. We actually had built one at my family's home back in the 70s, where we, you know, took the trees down ourselves, we leveled the ground, we put clay down, and it was a lesson, you know, that it just doesn't appear, and that you actually have to maintain it. And that's the way that I was raised, that if you have something, it has to be maintained.
Yeah. Well, I know my neighbor's daughter started playing tennis against the garage door. And
Right.
she did that for 3 or 4 years before she started really playing.
It's great
And
if
she
it's
became
wood.
and she became a state champion.
If it's plexi, you know, if it's fiberglass, that's really not a good alternative.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned to Mr. Burke on election night that I would always go down to the driveway that goes into the side of the high school underneath the gym, because there's that wall there.
Sure.
And it used to be painted for handball, and all the lines were there, so you could actually play tennis by yourself against that wall.
Sure.
That's great if you're by yourself or with
Right.
someone, you want to rally back and forth like that, but it's still not a tennis court. So,
So the compromise we talked about, is that something you can take back to your committee and
Well,
kinda, I think it's
committee works under you guys, so if you want one tennis court there, you'll get a tennis court there. I'll go to the engineers tomorrow and have them cease and desist on the
Well,
parking lot. and
I'd
see
take
what
a
they're
motion, why don't we just take a vote on it and see if everybody's
Well-
in agreement?
I'd like to make a motion to keep one tennis court at Newhall Field and eliminate one of them for additional parking.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So I
problem.
think that'll be a good compromise. Okay?
Not a
And
problem for
thank
me.
you.
I don't have kids playing baseball.
I'm very happy,
I'm sure you'll hear from the
Okay,
baseball
thank you.
parents tomorrow.
Huh? Well, that's okay.
But,
It's okay. Well, they're gonna get,
that's it.
they're gonna get additional parking and.
It's getting late. I mean, I don't know how much more you want from the, from
No,
the
I think, I
townwide fields.
appreciate, I think we're good. You got a question?
Yeah, two quick questions.
Sure, why don't you go up to the mic and tell us who you are and say hello? You can use that one right there.
Paul Briggs. I have, my first question is, there was a comment made earlier about the fees that we're going to be collecting. I don't think at any point in the process have I heard what the estimated future replacement cost is and how close we'll be to that cost with the fees we plan to collect. So that would be my question number one. And number two, and I apologize, I'm going to be a little bit, maybe come across a little bit negative about the project, but I do like the project. I think the town should embrace what they've done. I'm very appreciative of your time. But within the past week, we've had another news story come out about the safety of these fields. I know some of you have gotten an email from me in the fall with my concern about this. I just had a daughter come home from soccer practice before I came to this meeting saying her friends were throwing around the rubber pellets and they're eating them. I think in most towns, there's been more vigorous public debate about how safe these materials are. And I think I've read just about everything that can be read, and my personal feeling is that all the arguments on both sides are, or at least studies, are sort of dubious. So I just come back to common sense that these things are made with chemicals that aren't good for people, and kids are playing on them, and they're eating them. They're getting on their water bottles. They drop a mouthpiece. They're getting on their mouthpiece. And so I just, as we think about what we're going to do at the middle school and at other projects in the future, I'd just like to get a sense from what the Fields Committee thinks or the Selectmen think about the safety of the fields, and would they consider alternatives? The town of Concord just went up for a vote to try to put a moratorium on these fields, and I think the moratorium did in fact fail, but it just goes to some of the concerns that people have. I just talked to a coach who said, to former Linfield guy that's down south, and they said they've had MRSA problems in these fields. There's concerns about the heat in the summertime. So what happens when we go through our first round of double sessions? So these are the concerns I have, and as we think about adding, I think we had to do what we did in that location. But do we have to do it again at the middle school? Do we need more artificial surfaces?
You want to take that one, Arthur?
I'll take it.
Sure.
So I have an extensive white paper, Mr. Briggs, that was prepared by the field committee, primarily me, on these crumb rubber fields. Crumb rubber infill is a topic of great discussion right now following the NBC article on the safety of those fields. But if you go back and watch the NBC video again, what you'll see is no single scintilla of scientific evidence alluded to by them, despite the fact that they delayed that story for several months trying to get different chemists and people to talk to them about the scientific danger of those fields. The white paper that we've prepared also has extensive discussions citing safety studies done by the California Department of Public Health, by the New York City Department of Public Health, by the state of Connecticut, looking at these crumb rubber fields and running toxicity tests on them, on the crumb rubber, including chemical vats that were developed that had the same chemical secretions that the human stomach does to see what it did when it took the rubber, absorbed the rubber. And so far, despite a lot of research, we've not been able to find a single bit of evidence that supports the claims that this crumb rubber is bad for you. Having said that, I don't disagree with you that these are they're petrochemicals that are being developed to do these fields. But it's no different than the residue that comes off of tires every day on every street that are in the air that blow around, that get inhaled. Yes, there's a little bit more of it, but and truthfully, if the kids are throwing it up at each other and throwing it in the air, I would hope the coach would stop that behavior, because that probably is not good behavior, and I doubt that they're eating it. I mean, I've coached on those fields for 25 years. I've, had a daughter that played on crumb rubber fields for the last 15 until she got out of the game. But I in my heart of hearts, I just don't believe, based on everything that I've read and everything I've seen, that these fields are a problem. There are certain communities that have made a decision to spend extra money to go away from crumb to either cork or to some other substances. The cork doesn't last as long. There are a number of different problems with it. I mean, the same material that's being used in these fields is in the soles of every pair of sneakers that the kids have. So, and again, I don't think it's being inhaled or ingested, so there are certain problems that are inherent with that. But I've, again, read through dozens and dozens of studies and read the complete study, including some studies done over in Europe as well, and the big study was done up in Canada at I forget the school, but there are a number of studies that I'd be happy to send you the white paper if you want to send me an email, and I'll send you the white paper. You can read through it. And, you know, somebody said to me, well, most of the evidence here is, you know, dated. It's 2011, 2012, 2013. That's right, but there's been no substantial studies since then, because those studies are the ones that they stand on, and there's been no substantial studies at all that show that there's any problem with this. And I'm going to tell you that some of the chemical companies that are sponsoring, or they're getting some of these crumb rubber articles run because they want the fertilizer business instead of the crumb rubber business, there's a lot of money being spent to try to get these crumb rubber fields knocked off. And that's, I think, part of the problem is that you see these articles. And I know there was an article in the Huffington Post a couple of weeks ago that talked about these fields, again, the danger of crumb rubber. And again, I just, we haven't seen any scientific evidence to substantiate it. And I think it's pretty easy to speculate that there's a problem if you don't have to prove that there's a problem. And there's a lot of proof that says there isn't a problem. And so that's where I would go from that standpoint. I think there was another question that you had.
Well, the first part of the question was about raising money to pay for the...
Yeah, the replacement cost is about $1 million a field. The user fees and some of the rental money that we think these fields will take in should raise somewhere between $3 and $5 million. We hope to offset a substantial amount of the money. The expected lifespan of these fields is somewhere in the 12 to 15 year range, depending upon how much use and traffic they get. So, you know, we expect that over the course of those years, the user fees are currently set or scheduled to be set at, I think, $30 per player season. I think when we looked at that revenue, it was there was 100,000 plus per year. I can't remember the exact number. It was somewhere around 100,000 plus a year. And then, I'm sorry, I'm wrong with the 3 million, but it was it was $1.3 million or $1.4 million that we expected to get from user fees. But they're certainly not going to pay the replacement costs, and there was never any intention that it would.
In field hockey,
Mhm.
where they have the sticks hitting at the Astrodome all the time, wouldn't that lifespan be a lot shorter than just the cleats?
Well, the field hockey and the
I mean, they have their sticks
yeah,
on the ground all the time.
you know, first of all, I think the field hockey season is so short that it's not going to take the type of abuse from field hockey sticks that it would take. It's going to take from cleats that are on it every day. But you know, I'm sure there may be a little bit additional wear and tear. But the turf length on the field hockey field is shorter than the turf length on the stadium field. They do play in the stadium, but there's a half-inch difference in turf length, so where the field hockey field is going to be designated, which is the outfield of the baseball field, there's a half-inch turf difference. That turf blade is a little shorter.
Now, do the pellets pop up more because they are swinging with the
Well,
sticks?
I mean, if you dip down into the pellets with the sticks, they're going to come up. How high are they going to come up? I don't know.
Well, because most of them
Well, the real
are
problem,
ducked.
yeah, the real problem with the soccer was the goalies on the ground. That was the concern of the crumb rubber with the goalies. So, I mean, that's...
But the field hockey sticks do raise.
They do. Oh, yeah.
And the girls are squatted.
Across.
They do, but again, there's no scientific evidence to prove that the crumb rubber is a problem.
Not yet.
Well, I think also
Right,
to
but
answer
that's-
Mr.
but
Briggs'
that's-
question.
I mean,
Arthur, I just want to answer his question first. If you were talking about the replacement costs, we're going through our first summer with the fields. We're just getting an idea of what we can rent them out for also. There's a lot of rental income that is also going to be put in these accounts besides the player fees. So we're going to start getting a good idea of what kind of money we can generate out of the fields in a year. Now, we aren't going to rent them 24/7 like some towns do, but we're going to get some clubs, some camps and stuff that are going to use these fields. We've already rented them out to several of them. And we'll have a good idea after 1 or 2 summers, really what kind of money we're going to be generating in addition to all the fees we're going to be taking in. So it is still a moving target.
Probably have $1 million in 10 years, and I think these fields will need to be replaced in 8 to 10 years, not 12 to 15.
It could be. It could be, but the new fields are better than the ones that are being replaced now, so they really don't even know for sure how long they're gonna last, but they know they're gonna last at least 10,
And some of the
and they're
studies-
estimating 12 to 15.
Some of the studies suggest that the older they get, and as these materials start to break down, that they
Right.
do become more toxic. And that's a concern as well. I think the Consumer Protection Agency, the Federal Consumer Protection Agency, has a new director. In the New England Cable News story that just came out this week, they said that they're gonna revisit their study because they said their study was insufficient. So I do think that there's some uncertainty here, and when we have uncertainty, why would we take risks with our kids? And so my question is, do we need another turf field? Is what we've done adequate, since we did more than we had originally planned, getting the baseball and softball field in? We can utilize those outfields. Do we need it, and should we take that risk and assume the future, it's an unfunded liability in my view, should we assume that unfunded liability and the potential health risks? Because I think it's uncertain. We know it's chemicals, so that's, I just come back to the common sense. We know that it's materials that aren't good for people, and I'm a little uneasy about it when I send my 9-year-old out and I know that she's kicking around in this thing or dropping a mouthpiece or, you know, grabbing an orange that's off the ground and it's covered in these things. It's concerning to me.
Well, I agree that it should be a concern, but everything that we've read and everything that Mr. Bork has studied and we've it's conveyed back to us and the Fields Committee has not proven any of that to be true.
And there is an extensive study out of Penn State on Mercer, which we looked at pretty hard before we did these fields, showing that there is no Mercer issue on these fields. So I know that, I understand the concern. There's a bigger problem in the locker room than there is on the fields. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's gonna be a new field or a renovated field at the middle school. A lot of that's gonna depend on how much money we raise, because that's all gonna be on private fundraising. So, is there a need for another turf field? Yeah, there is. The demand for fields in this town is going up every year. You know.
The turf fields also reduce the need for other fields, because we're able to use the outfield and the use, you don't have to keep you.
Yeah, and you don't have to rest it to regrow, and
So,
you know.
I mean, that's also saves all
So
long
Jordan
term.
Park was one of the heaviest used fields in the Gale study, 500+ uses.
Oh, no question.
With, granted, public soccer threw a lot of money and fertilizer and everything else at it
That's
to
right.
make them nice, but they're as playable until they got overused while
Right.
the other fields were taken out of circulation. They had been as playable as any other field that was in the.
They were
Right.
playing
in and around
football,
Cape Ann.
soccer, I mean, field hockey down at the high school. I mean, the amount of them, you know, about at the high school, how much use back there.
Those fields will remain as grass fields, and those will be renovated also.
I think maybe the bigger point to your issue is we got a couple of years before this is gonna happen. So if some future information comes up, some other studies that would deter us from using the fields should pop up, then I'm sure the Fields Committee would certainly take that into consideration. Because I don't think anybody wants to put our children in harm's way,
I'm sure of that.
you know?
There's no question. Okay. Arthur, I
I-
appreciate anything you've done. Thank you very much.
One quick question
Go ahead.
regarding the
Go
high
ahead, Tom.
school fields. I know that this is going back to a conversation I had with Bill 6-7 months ago, maybe even longer. He was talking about some sort of a relief valve of some sort that brought the water out into the wetlands or conservation lands, whatever it is to the left, where the old backstop used to be. And something needed to get replaced out there. Was that all taken care of?
Yes and no. So there is a test well that is directly adjacent to the outflow pipes from the fields. And when the outflow pipes were put in, there was a reading issue with that test well through Martinage or through the DEP. And they came out and visited the site and had some things to say about the site and a lot of technical detail. But then it turns out that they hadn't had a reading in that test well for 12 or 15 months, and there was some other issues. They were going to go back and look. And quite honestly, we haven't heard anything from them in a year, other than to get a bill from them for their visit out here. And we're quite honestly trying to figure out, Mr. Boudreau is aware, we're trying to figure out how a state agency is going to build a local town for services that they provided with their employees that are on the state payroll. We just, it's just, bureaucracy run amok, but that's another whole story.
So do we know if that's gonna have to be replaced, or?
Right now, we don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, we have no reason to believe it will. They came out and inspected the well. It was protected. They were concerned that they couldn't get a valid reading and that the ground flow of the water flow or the water, there was a name for it, I forget what the name is, but they had a technical name for it, that the ground flow may have been disrupted from the wet septic system, but it doesn't appear that's true. And Martinage, who is our engineering firm, we pay them $50,000 or $60,000 to manage that, has not raised an issue with us on it, so I think we're all set.
Arthur, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next issue on the agenda is the stopples for national development regarding refinancing.
One of these is ours, one of these is for the Conservation Commission. The first one is ours. This, according to Tom Mullen, is a normal course of action on a large project when they're gonna refinance. The banks wanna make sure that when they lend the money, the project is not gonna be stopped because of lawsuits or problems with the project. I did talk to Tom this afternoon, and Bob had given you, I believe, a suggested amendment to this, given the amount of discussion we had at town meeting and prior to town meeting about the signs, is that we do amend it to put some language at the end. Nothing herein shall be construed as relating to the extent to which the existing signage conforms to the requirements of section 9.5 of the zoning bylaws or the design standards promulgated thereunder. Tom is concerned that if we sign the estoppel agreement saying that they're in compliance with the development agreement in total, and then we come back and say your signs are not in compliance, we could run into a little issue with ourselves. So he thinks it's fine if we make that change to it.
Well, thank you, Jim. I agree. I think we should have something in there. I know the planning board has brought issues up, so I think that would be a proper add-on. And any other questions or concerns from the board?
Yeah, I'm not sure what page you're referring to.
You have an email from Tom
I
Mullen.
see the email, but what are we changing here?
On this first page,
Yes.
in the second paragraph, at the end, in the residence portion of the project, period, after that, nothing herein to add the sentence at that point. And also in the motion, because there's only one signature line, you should authorize the chairman to sign on behalf of the board.
This just mirrors the Chapter 40R requirements for this project zoning, correct? Is that
Sorry, Chris?
the Chapter 40R or the development that Market Street is? That the sign bylaw, the way that was changed, or?
Well, the signage is actually in the development agreement.
Yeah.
So, what you're stipulating is that they are, is in full force and effect to the best of the undersigned's knowledge, the developer is in full compliance with all the obligations under the development agreement. So, Tom felt it was prudent that we carve out a little issue that we have with those signs, so we
It
don't
just
end up.
protects the current requirements, exactly as it's stated.
Yep.
Right.
Changes nothing.
By signing this, are we saying that we're acknowledging that they're in compliance?
With all the other parts of the development
Without the
agreement, yes.
amendment, we are. Right.
To the best of our knowledge, they are in
Right.
compliance with the development agreement, with the exception of the signs.
Signage.
And we don't know if they're in compliance on those or not.
Okay.
But Tom's feeling was to sign the estoppel agreement saying they're in compliance, and then 2 months from now, raising the issue saying, hey, we think your signs are a problem, would put ourselves in conflict with what we just signed.
And adding this language will prevent that?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the estoppel for national development regarding the refinancing with the addition of the language recommended by the town attorney, Tom Mullen.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Can I get a subsequent motion to authorize the chairman to sign on behalf of the board?
I'd like to make another motion to authorize the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Phil Crawford, to sign the amended agreement.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Does that cover both estoppels?
Second one is gonna be done by the Conservation
It's only
Commission.
conservation
Yep.
only? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
I just put it in there for your information.
We have two exemptions under Mass Laws, 268A, Section 20B. This has to do with a town or municipal employee and we're acknowledging that he's doing something else for the town that may be construed as a conflict of interest. We're doing this for two separate employees. One's for Robert Priestley. He's on the Fields Committee and the Finance Committee. He's gonna be, what's Bob doing?
Bob's gonna be taking.
Memorial Day DJ services. That's what he's asking to do. We've done this several times for Bob in the past. We have no problem with it. And so I would take a motion to allow the exemption.
I'll make a motion to allow the exemption under Chapter 268A for Robert Priestley to be the DJ at the Memorial Day event.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We have a second one from Michael DiCorrado, who's a dispatcher for the police. He also wants an exemption so we can do Memorial Day food services. I'll take a motion to allow that.
I think he did this as well last year.
He did
He
do it
did a
last year.
great job, so I make a motion to approve his Mike DiCorado's Chapter 268A exemption.
I second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The Whole Foods petition was withdrawn from the agenda. We have a resignation from the Board of Health. I'll read this quickly. This letter is to notify formal notice of my resignation from Board of Health. My last Board of Health meeting will be scheduled in June. Sincerely, David L. Jameson. I'd like to thank Dr. Jameson for all his work. I know he's retired now, and I wish him the best in retirement.
I'd like to also say that Dr. Jameson's certainly someone's been dedicated to Linfield, I think, for his service to the Board of Health.
I'd like to thank Dr. Jameson. I attended one of their last meetings and did an outstanding job looking out for the best interest of the town. So I wish you well in your retirement, Doctor.
Next item is the Rotary Concert Series on the Common banner request. We got two separate requests. We got the concert series and the banner. Should we take these separately?
I would, yeah.
Yep. So we'll do the banner first.
I make a motion to approve the banner for the Rotary Concert Series on the Common.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we have the concert series use application. Oh, this is for the
It's also
Knights
for
of
the Rotary,
Columbus.
yep. No, the Linfair Rotary is the use of
the Rotary.
the Common.
Rotary for the use of Common.
Yep, for the
Yep.
summer concert series.
And it comes along
Wait a
with
minute,
the
we
banner.
got the banner request.
The banner's
Which
one thing, then the use of the Commons is second.
Okay.
The letter that talked about
Oh.
the banner and the use, then they filled out the actual form, which I provided to you on your desk.
Well, I had said, is there a use
Yeah.
requirement, yeah.
So I'll make a motion to approve the Rotary's use of the Common for the concert series.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, you want it back?
Yeah.
Next item is the one-day liquor license for the Night of Columbus for June 6th from 4 to 8. They're having a birthday party, about 50 people. It's been signed off on. They do a nice job up there. The Chief Breen signed off on it. I take a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to approve the June 6, 2015 birthday party at the Knights of Columbus for a one-day liquor license.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And the last two things we have to do is approve the last two set of minutes. One very short, was the meeting before the meeting on the 30th, and the first one was the, actually, these are both the town meetings. One's on the 27th, one's on April 30th.
I read through them both and I have no questions or concerns.
Same here.
So I'll
Take
make
a motion to accept them?
Make a motion to accept the April 27th Board of Selectmen minutes.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye. Make another motion to approve the April 30th Board of Selectmen minutes.
I second that.
All those in favor? Aye. So I can make a motion to adjourn.
And I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out to Century 21, including my fellow selectmen, to do the little walk around for the Herb Chambers, adding some parking over there, and I think it meant a lot to the Canterbury residents to see all three of us there, out there in full force and concern for them. So just want to thank everybody for showing up that day, and thank Attorney Ted Rignante. He did a great job with trying to answer he did answer everybody's questions. He tried to appeal to everybody's needs during that meeting. So I think he did an outstanding job. And one last comment is I want to thank the Girl Scouts for having me at their Gold Awards, or their awards bridging meeting. And everybody did an outstanding job that night. I just wanted to acknowledge Gina Gustafson as the coordinator and Sheila Craffey as her assistant for doing so much work. So thank you very much, ladies. And with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.